Spouses and partners of Reddit, what red flags are you glad you ignored? How she'd worry over the smallest things, anything that went wrong. Dentist, food going off, traffic, not having enough time to wash her hair, would send her into a panic and put her in a foul mood that could last for hours. I'm the exact opposite, completely laid back. If the dentist doesn't have good news, I'll accept it and not worry. If food goes off, I'll pop down to the shops and grab some more, and if we're late because of traffic, that's just how it goes. I thought our moods would be the thing to end us, to slowly wear down my patience to a point where I'd stop trying to comfort, reassure and calm her down. I was wrong. Reader, I've never been happier, and we're good for each other. I can calm her down and she can make me care about things I didn't used to think were a big deal but ultimately are. We work so well together. First date, he had a man sheet on his truck seat and 2 ropes on the floor. I'm sorry, I've been to the ranch and I was cutting weeds. Little did I know, there were also 2 shovels under the back seat. He is a biologist and he will hunt down plants. My spouse's very weird and unusual sense of humor. I was afraid he was mentally unstable. He would draw weird cartoons, mimic people's voices and mannerisms, creepily accurate, and tell the craziest stories. It turns out he's just freaking hilarious and he usually keeps me belly laughing once a week. I have a very dark sense of humor, darker than most. I'm very thankful my husband finds it cute, because most find it weird and I'm sure revolting sometimes. This just let me know most people, no matter their quirks, are going to find someone who will enjoy and embrace their weirdness. When I met him, my husband had just closed his comic book store. I had a few people who didn't know him at all tell me that he was a loser because he had a comic book store and that type never does well in life. I knew his store closed for reasons out of his control. Business partner for cancer, sold the store to pay for treatment, and that he was seriously depressed about it. No one else seemed to see the man I did and I felt like I was stealing him. Legit the most generous, kindest, funniest, smart butt dude I've ever met. I'm glad I ignored him because I doubt I could find a better partner in life. There's been a lot of crap thrown at us but we have navigated it together. I love him and despite how much the rest of my life sucks, my marriage is resilient and healthy. When I met my wife and we became more and more intimate, she opened up to me and told me she didn't want to have secrets from me. She then proceeded to tell me the story how she had spent some time in a psychiatric clinic recently and what she had been through. I was a little bit scared first, but she managed to convince me that she had made a full recovery. She told me she went full jackpot with me and risked me getting up and leaving her, but she didn't want to build our relationship on a lie. We have been married for 15 years now and she's the love of my life. That's a green flag. That's called honesty. Probably the most important trait since it basically negates most of the bad ones. I ignored all the huge red flags about his family. They were loud, overbearing, oversensitive, negative and narcissistic. My husband's none of those things. I literally told him after meeting them that I never knew families like his really existed. Thought it was some exaggeration or dramatic trope. Fortunately, nearly 15 years later, my in-laws are all cut off or dead and we have zero family drama. The moral here is killing your in-laws equals zero family drama. I mistook my husband's relaxed attitude with not caring. Nope, he really is that easygoing. Now I love his even temperament. Sometimes is annoying but is mostly calming. This is me, calm and relax AF. My girlfriend is a fricked up hurricane but we do love each other. LOL. Best of luck to both of you. He had a side gig as a puppeteer and used to use the plastic eyes from second-hand stuffed animals for the puppets. So when I met him I found a bag of eyeless stuffed animals. I made him show me the puppets for proof before getting over it. He's the best though and we've been married for over a decade with a family. The serial killer room. I went home with him for the first time to a completely blank room. No personal possessions, white bedspread and pillows. The windows had bars on them. I gave him a cool picture for his walls. Didn't get murdered, and been living together 2 years now. He's just tidy. We are the complete opposite. I love to flit around, not staying anywhere too long and live in the short term without any kind of planning on impulse. She hates the idea of being without a long-term plan and knows exactly what she wants to do with the rest of her life. She has managed to help me sort out some kind of realistic path for the rest of my life, our lives, and I've managed to get her on a rough planned tour of SE Asia. Keep going till the money runs out. We have managed to develop the parts of our personalities that made life difficult for us, and each individually blossomed as a pair. We are currently on our way to Malaysia, and I've managed to stash a ring in my backpack. She makes me excited for the rest of my life. As a Malaysian, do it in Pankar, or Penang or Langkawi. They are all great places to pop the question. Penang has dope food, char kway teow, Assam laksa, sental. You should go there if you have the chance, and good luck. I was always told to date a man that treats his mom right and is a family man because I could expect him to treat me the right way. My so hates his mom and has always been private about his family. We celebrate 7 years together next month, and I've never regretted looking past the family thing. Both of our families were worried the 7-year age gap would be a big hurdle to overcome. I was 20 and she 27. 11 years together and 5 years married, it's never been an issue. Hey, I'm 7 years older than my husband. That's the same exact age we met too. Love this story. I thought he was too rigid the way he runs his life. He has his routines and follows a schedule for everything. 4 years and some later, as it turns out, eating home cooked meals and going to bed at 11 and waking up at 7 every day does wonders to your health. My partner had a string of crazy ex-girlfriends, which is usually a massive red flag. Turns out he has really low self-esteem and ended up with these awful girls because he didn't think he deserved any better. He'd keep trying to work on the relationship while I beyond the point most people would bail, after them gaslighting, cheating, burning his belongings, etc. I'm so glad I ignored that red flag. He's the sweetest guy and their crazy was completely not his fault. Beyond poor judgment dating them in the first place, lol. Okay, but how do we know that you're not also crazy? She doesn't like pancakes. It is still annoying. And she says I should just make them for myself, but I'm like, how am I gonna make pancakes for one person? God. She is super great though, so I'm over it. She wouldn't organize for me to meet her family. It's 2 years in, we're now married, and I still haven't met them. But it's okay. I've met her friends and for her they are her family, so that's all okay in my book. I thought she was too sensitive, especially since I'm the complete opposite of that. She brings joy and excitement to my life and I wouldn't change a thing now. Bit of a twist in that I was the partner with all the red flags. My now husband was pretty against dating someone with mental health issues when we started going out, due to bad past experiences. I've got bipolar disorder and a history of abuse that left me with a screwed up relationship with sex. In retrospect, I was the opposite of what he was looking for, but he stayed because he realized I was working my tail off to get better and he's still amazed at the progress I've made. I think he realized that mental illness and trauma are not necessarily red flags if the person with them isn't using you as a crutch. Good for you. Working on your mental health is such a challenge, but also so rewarding. Keep up the good work, and good for your partner for being such a good person, for understanding and being supportive. My boyfriend came on to me really fast and strong, which I've always been told was a red flag. Asked me out 3 days after meeting me. Told me he loved me a week later. Wanted to get married after 4 months. Turns out whirlwind romances do exist because we're perfect for each other and still going strong 5 years later. I was the weirdo. I knew about my husband the day after we got together for our one night stand. I told him straight out that I thought it was love and that I wasn't fricking around. Was he in or out? Thankfully he said he felt the same way. Actually I said I was too old to be fricking around. I was 22. In hindsight that is way younger than it felt at the time. 16 years together next week. My dad always told me, I don't care who you bring home, as long as they have their own drill. I come from a family of woodworkers with a lot of DIY experience. My partner doesn't have his own drill, but he was absolutely amazing in every other way, so my dad loved him right from the start despite this egregious fault. I like it. I have over a dozen drills. He had severe depression, no job, had dropped out of uni, lived at home with his parents, and on meeting him, clearly autistic, he's freaking wonderful, the kindest, Gentlest man I've ever met. He works so hard to overcome so much all the time, despite it being so difficult for him. He supports me through everything unquestioningly, put in hours of effort to help me through my degree and professional exams, and when I was pushing for promotion, he always has time for me, no matter what. We've been together 8 years, married for 6 years. He got his degree through distance learning and is now doing a master's and has a job. He achieved so much and he just needed some love and support to get there. I'm so freaking lucky to have him. As a guy in a similar position, minus the autism, this gives me hope. Thanks for that. My wife, for as long as I've known her, has been incredibly driven, always organized, has an action plan and a backup plan for everything. Definitely a lot more mature than I am, probably ever be. She's a very typical type A person. I'm the complete opposite of that. Go with the flow, no organization. Procrastinate nearly everything I did. While we were dating, I was really worried that she'd leave me because of how I am personally. However, we both complement each other really well. She makes sure I'm accountable for what needs to be get done and helps me stay on track. And as she puts it, I reminded her to have some fun now and again. I'm really fortunate to have her in my life and that she accepts me for who I am through all of my quirks. I met him on the internet and he's older than me. Met online when I was 12 and he was 15. He lived across the country. Met up in person when I was 16 and he was 19. Got together after that and married this year. We're now 24 and 27. Glad I ignored don't meet strangers online, however I am an advocate for being safe online. When we met in person I met him with 10 of my friends just in case he was a murderer. When on our second date he was super nervous and giving me some real timid guy vibes. He was doing this thing where he would look at me and nervously bite his lip. At the time I had only ever dated super macho, very confident men. It was a real turn off and I distinctly remember thinking okay, just get through this date. Best decision ever. 6.5 years later he is my husband, and the best thing that ever happened to me. He is just the best thing in the world and I couldn't give a crap about those type A guys I used to go for. I'm so glad I ended up with him because he's exactly what I need. He's way braver and more confident in himself than the kind of men I thought I was into. And his lip biting thing when he's nervous is rare and super cute. I really love my husband. Gonna go tell him again. I can relate. When I met my future husband he came off as shy and kinda goofy. Told my friend I'd met a guy who was nice but not really my type, which was type A guys. Best advice she gave me was maybe you've been chasing the wrong type. 10 years and 2 kids later wouldn't exchange him for anything. He's so much kinder and stronger than I thought I deserved. I was worried that the gap between our family's wealth would be an issue. Lower middle versus upper middle. It probably would have been if I were with her sister. He doesn't like cheese at all. I freaking live for cheese. But it's okay. More for me. Everything for me, to be exact. I don't like cheese either. My husband is weirdly protective about it. He will tell the pizza place 4 times and that one has no cheese on it. It is very important that it does not have any cheese. But he never has to worry about me eating his food. My fiance's previous marriage. We met on Tinder and at the time we were both fairly young. I was 23, he was 25, and I wasn't really looking for anything serious. I had a habit of discounting people with what I presumed might be baggage like ex-wives or kids, although he doesn't have any, because it wasn't anything I felt ready to take on. However, we really hit it off and he was always very upfront about the situation from day one. So I decided to roll with it. We've been together 3.5 years, are engaged and are now expecting our first child together. He spent an hour of our first date talking about the elaborate way he planned to kill himself. Turns out that nobody had ever really listened to him, including his ex-wife, and he was feeling hopeless and invisible. Once he had a chance to talk some stuff through, his depression quickly faded, and he's been the best husband and co-parent I could ever want for 13 years now. Bold strategy that really seems more like second or third date material. Her 3 kids. At first I was like, hey, I don't know about this. All it took was one hug and it changed to okay, I can live with this. Reminds me of my dad. He married my mother when she had 4 children all age 5 or under. You all are the best type of people. My husband is 6 years older and had been in a pseudo long distance open relationship. This girl lived in another state and essentially had him on reserve as her vacation boyfriend on her family's 3+ trips to his town each year. I confirmed what the situation was with the right people and took my time to ease into asking him out and made it clear that I was interested in a serious relationship. Unlike the other girl's firm nothing serious routine. Essentially, I snatched my husband off another girl's hook. LOL dang. He wasn't known for long relationships. I thought he wouldn't keep anyone. He is just a very unique personality that I love. Many girls found that annoying and left. Been together 5 years. Been kind of friends since 7. She wanted us to not tell people we were dating. Wondered whether that was a red flag about and whether she would be willing to commit to a relationship. A few months later we made it public and we are now married. Turns out she felt that I could be the one and didn't want to jeopardize it by having people gossip. I just turned 18 when we met and he was 24. We also happened to meet 2 months before I was leaving for college 4 hours away. The long distance sucked and my parents weren't huge fans of the age difference, but the next fall semester he decided to follow me and we both graduated in July. It's been 1/2 years since we started dating and we're about to move in together. Edit. My parents don't care anymore about the age gap. They love him and keep asking when the wedding is. My boyfriend is 9 years older than I am. LOL I kinda like the age gap. Even if my co-workers don't understand it. My family had no problems with it though. When I first met him, I thought he was one of those people who was too cool to like things and a bit negative. Turns out he's the sweetest, most caring and most romantic person I've ever met. I'm so lucky. I gave my number to a good looking guy who approached me in a bar and forgot about it. Around 2 AM that night, I got drunk dialed by someone I thought was my male housemate. He identified himself with that name and said he was standing outside and to please let him in because it was cold. My housemate at the time did have a habit of locking himself out and doing hilarious dumb crap while drunk. I went outside and saw nothing. I looked up and down the street while the guy on the phone insisted he was there. After talking to him some more, I realized the guy on the phone wasn't my roommate but the guy I'd given my number to earlier that night. He just had the same name as my housemate. He was just massively drunk. He'd lost his wallet and keys. Later that night, he cabbed home without realizing he had no wallet, and the cab driver called the cops on him in front of his building. Apparently, he'd just gotten out of a terrible relationship and was drinking himself into a stupor. I was single and bored and had nothing better going on, and he seemed like a nice enough guy. I let all this slide when he told me about it on our first date, including his recent cheating girlfriend. We've been married for 4 years now and have 2 kids together. Drinking heavily and being stupid is not something I've seen him do since the night we met. The situation with his ex just really messed with his head. He sounds nice. I can't really blame him go drinking in that situation. He was kinda creepy at first and I had to stop him. I felt like he had too many emotional issues I didn't want to deal with and our friendship really deteriorated, but then, when he gave me the space I needed to heal from a past relationship and I opened my mind to give him a chance, our relationship became really beautiful. He's an absolutely beautiful person. He's the best boyfriend ever. We've been together for 2 years now. He's so considerate and loving. He was just very awkward and truly didn't know what was expected from him. He is the sweetest and I'm so happy. That is sweet. Wishing you guys another happy 2 years. One of my best friends in college claimed my girlfriend was a succubus. Made life a bit difficult since he was also my roommate. 2 years later he had a brain tumor removed. My wife and I have been together now for 16 years and have a beautiful daughter. Didn't ever meet her parents. 1 year and 2 months later, she finally opens up her shell and tells me that they died in a car accident days before we met. I thought he was way too clingy and loved stuffed animals a lot and a little too attached to stuff. He turned out to be a guy with a big heart who taught me a lot about caring for people, who mellowed out a lot. He's working on the sentimentality and having too much stuff. He likes having space for living in too. I'm late but I want to share anyways. In the beginning he came on way too strong. He immediately approached me at every event he saw me. If I would catch a glimpse of him, I knew he would be standing around me within no time, sometimes not even talking to me, just joining the people I was with and standing there listening, beaming. My friends would make jokes about it and make bets of how long he could bear to wait until he came over. Once at a pub quiz, he got our team disqualified because he kept excitingly joining in, but we already had too much people. He tried hard to spend time with me. When I would tell him I was too busy with an assignment, he would suggest a homework date, not getting any hints and just genuinely being excited that we found something we could do together. For some reason he would show his affection by fixing small things in my room around him, like neatly rearranging my cables while we talked. At our first official date going out for a drink, he would talk non-stop about himself and about his ex that he had broken up with just the month before. That was a red flag, and him being all over me was too. I turned him down. But by then, I had already started to get fond of him, and that grew during the months when I had some space to reflect on it. Then, when I was with someone else and I found him too drunk at some party, he tapped on my shoulder and he said to me something like, "Hey, I am ready to go home now." His best friend immediately took over, because my date was with me, and took him home. But him saying that made me realize that I actually wanted to be the one to take him home and reassure him. We're now together for almost 2 years, taking him home ever since. Have never won any pub quizzes again and have excellent cable management now. 10/10 can recommend. It's amazing how that one drunk moment made you realize how much he meant to you. The morning after we first met, we met at a party and I'd stayed over. He told me, fully serious, that he wanted to be a bear. He also told me that morning how he only likes hoodies with one front pocket because it makes him feel like a kangaroo mama. Really weirded me out. That was the kind of thing he'd tell someone he basically just met. Turns out that said a lot more about his honesty than anything else. He is the kindest, most generous, rational and caring man I've ever met, and just the right amount of weird for me. Kangaroo mama. My wife has a flirty personality that dudes and chicks like really fast. I was jealous out of my freaking mind for the first few years, angry, shaming her, controlling. Something clicked in me where I figured out that she's a human living her own life with me. Our marriage couldn't be more sexy and strong. We couldn't be more in love the last 7+ years. It stemmed from me being jealous about girlfriends when I was younger. It's just how I operated. It turns out being jealous and controlling makes you a miserable person to be around. I realized, why do I deserve control? Once you ask yourself that question, you realize why you're an butthole. My wife never said this to me, by the way. This was a personal journey. And once you can figure out that no one deserves control over another person, you become a more confident, in control person yourself, which then attracts other confident, in control people. It's basically win-win. A lot of these answers, such as yours, are making me realize how many amazing, self-reflective people with massive capacity for growth there are out there. This is really nice to read. Your SOS are as lucky to have you as you are them. We started our relationship hurting from our past relationships. We swore up and down that we would be friends with benefits and nothing more. Cause frick relationships lol. 3 months into this fun time I decided I liked him and wanted to be more. He told me twice he looked at me as a friend. Told myself, frick this guy, I am not getting hurt again, and stopped talking to him. If I hadn't decided to return that message and see him one more time and say yes to being his girlfriend, we wouldn't have 8 awesome years together and celebrated our 5-year-old daughter's day. 3. This could be a Judd Apatow movie that releases during Christmas week. She's asexual, and I'm a very sexual person. I completely overlooked it on her online profile when we first started talking, and when I realized my mistake, I wasn't sure what to do. She was smart, funny, a great conversationalist, and beautiful inside and out, but I worried, if I was always wanting something she couldn't provide, didn't that mean our relationship would be doomed right from the get-go? When I agreed to meet with her, I wasn't sure it was a good idea. I didn't know what to expect, but she was every bit as much a kind and amazing person in the flesh as she was in text. Also, I found out, my conception of asexual was a bit oversimplified. It turns out, she can have sex, and under the right circumstances can even enjoy it, but does not become sexually attracted to people or desire it. In the years since, She has been nothing short of a dream. I love her as a person and thoroughly enjoy our physical relationship too. I can't imagine my life without her. What is the most romantic thing you have done for someone that has either backfired or was not received well by the person you did it for? I worked with this girl at a Ruby Tuesdays, and for her birthday we all went out for drinks. We were all friends and I think she knew I liked her at the time, though I hadn't made movie yet. She put off this rocker vibe, tattoos, colored hair, loved 80s hair metal and rock music in general. So for her birthday I decided to burn her a CD of all of my favorite songs from the band The Kills, because lead singer Alison Moshford kinda reminded me of her and I thought that their music would be right up her alley. So I burned the CD on my computer, decorated the CD cover with Sharpie, made it look really cool. I wrapped it up with fancy wrapping paper and a bow and gave it to her at the end of the night. I didn't wait for her to unwrap it, partly because I was still nervous about her reaction to my gesture and partly because I didn't want to put her on the spot while we were out amongst friends. I figured she would just let me know if she liked it at work the following week and I would use that as an opportunity to ask her out. Cut to next week. There was a day that I was off and she was working, and so was a close buddy of mine from high school. I come in the following day for work and he pulls me aside and says, "Dude, you should just forget about her." He goes on to tell me she had basically crap talked my gift, saying, "I can't believe he did that. I don't even like The Kills. My friend and I are really tight," and he's very outspoken and defends me, saying, "Are you kidding me? You should be so freaking lucky that anyone gives a crap about your birthday at all." When I heard about that incident, it killed any interest I had in her. She never even thanked me for the CD at all. She just never mentioned it and I moved on. Glad you had a good friend on your side at least. Any friend that stands up for you when you're not around is one worth keeping for sure. My girlfriend at the time had this friend who passed away, so I went out and bought Chinese sky lanterns, little hot air balloons. Pretty much. We wrote messages to her friend on them and launched them in the sky from my backyard. Hers careened right into a tree and almost set the whole dang thing ablaze. Why send a lantern when you can sacrifice a tree? I took my ex to Paris. Had the whole weekend planned. We went to the Eiffel Tower at night. Had a picnic. Basically did it all. She dumped me 2 weeks later. She said I wasn't romantic enough and didn't tell her I loved her enough when we were in Paris. Okay. She wanted to break up before the trip. 100%. Had a girlfriend come live with me after being in a not so great situation for nearly a year in another state. Was planning for 8 months to have a dress she had been dying to get waiting for her under the Christmas tree when she arrived, because she hadn't had the cash for groceries, let alone a nice dress. So, she got super excited when she saw the box and opened it right away. I bought the wrong dress. Literally whispered the word sweet nothings into my new girlfriend's ear. Whispering sweet nothings is a saying or general term used to describe a set of compliments or words intended to flatter or woo a lady. This was my attempt to be sexy, romantic in a humorous sense. At the very least, I thought she would find it funny. I thought wrong, however. I was unaware that this was something her ex used to say do on the regular. So I did not come off sexy or romantic, but actually repulsed her since I reminded her of him at that moment. Try nasty everything. Booked a spontaneous romantic trip to Paris for my girlfriend in college during a long weekend. Apparently, we both get grumpy as heck on long flights and basically spent the weekend fighting, so not worth the little money I had. That's why I drink heavily then pass out for 9 hours on long flights. Made a huge plan to ask my crush to prom. Made signs to her house asking her but didn't put up a name saying who did it. Well, turns out her neighbor had a crush too and took credit for it. She said yes to him. Nobody believed I did it and they're now married. That's a little rough. On the bright side, it seems you have a gift for unintentional matchmaking, so that's something. I got painting lessons for a girlfriend because she was getting into painting. She took it to mean that I thought her painting sucked. She never took the lessons and I never got my money back. Sounds to me like she was the one who thought her painting sucked. I emptied my wardrobe cabinet and filled the cabinet portion of it and placed on the shelf flowers, chocolate, a stuffed bear and numerous candy that she loved. When I told her to get my hoodie out of the cabinet, she opened it and said it's not here and then proceeded to close the cabinet. Welp. did a large portrait of my at the time girlfriend. We had been fighting and had not spoken in a few days, and I decided to do something I thought would be romantic and drew a portrait from my favorite photo of her. She got mad and said it made her look like crap. Gee, thanks. After the date, I dropped her off in the parking lot where her car was parked. We said goodbye and no kiss. It was our first date. She got out and began walking across the parking lot, and I suddenly got the courage to whip my car around, stop right in front of her, get out, and kiss her. In my head it was like something out of a film. In person, I pulled up to her, forgot to put it in park, got out, walked away from the car. She looked at me horrified and pointed. I turned around and ran towards my car as it slammed into another parked car. Just a typical day in my life, really. Decided to make a bold move with a close lady friend. Invited her over for a home-cooked meal on Valentine's Day in my crappy college apartment since neither of us were seeing anyone. Pretty smooth, right? I thought so. So I cook a pork loin and some pasta something or other, and purchased an expensive $12 bottle of wine. She'll be here any minute, I kept telling myself. At around 9 PM I texted her. She let me know that she assumed the invite was a joke. She did eventually sheepishly show up. We are now married and I remind her of this every Valentine's Day. I got my very anxious and overstressed ex so a package of 3 deep tissue massages to her place that we had gotten a couple's massage from. Her first massage ever, and she really enjoyed it. A few months later it was reported on the news that the owner proprietor of that spa was molesting and threatening women while giving them massages. In 8th grade, I tried to hop over a little mini fence by the pay area to impress the boy I liked. Needless to say, I did not make it, and instead ripped the whole back of my pants, exposing my prepubescent butt to my fellow peers, while also falling forward and smacking my face into the concrete below the fence. Needless to say, when the boy expressed his disinterest about me to his friends, I was not surprised. You went face down, butt up, that one is on him. Not me, but my boyfriend, and at first I hated it, but it really grew on me. 7 years ago, he promised a mini weekend getaway, a romantic picnic at a secluded beach and afterwards an intimate view of the sunset. First he came to pick me up about 2 hours late. Later I found out he was busy preparing everything for the picnic. We drove there, but luckily for us, a 4th grade class trip arrived. We quickly tried to find a place somewhere else. When we found a spot, my boyfriend told me to go ahead alone. I look back and see him pulling an enormous cooler, barely budging because of the heavy load. When I go over to him, the cooler tips over and all the ice and contents fall in the sand. He quickly starts shoving everything back inside, cursing under his breath and saying sorry over and over. The section of beach we found was dirty. The water looked like sludge and there was graffiti all over the rocks behind us. The drinks and fruits were covered in sand and the sandwiches had water in them from the cooler. We later realized there was sewage in the water, which was why there was a horrible smell and a disturbing amount of flies. Needless to say, we didn't wait till sundown. He didn't have money to buy anything else because he spent it all on ice and drinks. I paid for our Burger King meals. I hated it. I thought it was the worst experience ever, but later I went home and realized how hard he tried to make my first real summer date special. 7 years later, we're still going strong. OMG. Or, I've been there and done that. You have no idea how terrible you feel being the boyfriend in that situation. Senior year in high school, I had a girlfriend who I had been going out with for a while. With graduation getting close and us having different plans for our futures, things were getting tense and our relationship was getting rocky. There were really tall cliffs over the lake in the town I lived in. Our first official date was there, and in the early days we spent a lot of dates there at those cliffs. When we were rocky, we hadn't gone to them in a while, so as a way to revitalize our relationship, I decided to go there with her. It was really still and there was fog over the lake. It's a great lake, so it's massive, and it was unusual for there not to be at least some waves. We were sitting on the beach under the cliffs. She seemed happy and asked why I had wanted to come here. I explained my reasoning to her. I looked over to her and her face was in her hands. She said she wanted to break up. So yeah, that was rough. But it's been a few years, so now I can look back at it and laugh. I thought this was going to end with someone falling off a cliff, so at least you both survived. To celebrate our 5th Valentine's Day together, I was going to replicate our crappy first meal together over candlelight. It was banquet chicken patties with marinara sauce and mozzarella melted on top with pasta and a dill bag salad. In the days leading up to it, when she asked what I was going to do, I told her make a special meal. She laughed and said probably just make the same food we did years ago or something dumb. So, needless to say, I went to plan B. I used to write my boyfriend one sonnet per week about how much I loved him. I called him to tell him I got into the writing program at my university. He told me he'd been seeing someone else for 2 years, that he hated my writing, and ripped up all of my poems on the phone for me to hear. What an butthole. I hope you've moved on. Walking around at recess with my life or death crush Christina in 5th grade. I'd been planning this moment for weeks. She was a small girl. I told her she reminded me of strawberry shortcake. She asked why and I responded because you're short and sweet. She did not respond and I'm still dead inside. It's cool, you'll probably recover by the time you're in 6th grade. This is one I just remembered while scrolling through these replies. My entire high school career I was goth, always wearing band tees and combat boots, really grungy. It was just my style, and I liked it. I liked a guy who was friendly but didn't seem interested, so I decided to come to school one day dressed pretty, with pink lipstick and a skirt and normal boots. I thought for sure he'd see me as an ugly duckling turned swan. Everyone laughed. I was teased all day about my makeup. The girls were whispering about how dumb I looked for trying to dress like them. The guy I liked didn't take notice and started dating another girl in my class. And surprisingly, Carrie was my favorite book. Man, this hurt to read. I was one of those girls in high school who wasn't concerned with my appearance at all, and I didn't get teased for it too often. But as soon as you show that you're trying to put effort into it, kids are ruthless. My ex and I were to get married in 18 days, and we were really stressed out about the wedding. So I left work early, got a bunch of things, cooked dinner, set up a little scavenger hunt of memories to remind her of why we're together, which then led her to the dinner table with her favorite meal with candles. She then broke up with me, lied about why she did it, and I found out a few weeks later that the reason we were having trouble was not wedding related. It was because she was with someone else. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Spoiler, not fun at all. I booked a weekend at a nice resort up north after the first decent snowfall of the year, and one of the options was a sleigh ride. I thought it would be like a Hallmark card. Couldn't have been more wrong. First of all, it's way below freezing, but we were dressed for it. The horse had constant gas for the duration of the trip. Also, that horse doesn't give a crap that we're there. He's clipping trees, farting, hitting rocks, all in a sleigh with no suspension whatsoever. Hold on, this is where it usually tips over, our guide says. As if bouncing around on solid wood behind a fart machine wasn't bad enough, now it's apparent that we can just fall over any time. It's not that uncommon, though I've never seen it on a Hallmark card. We came back cold, tired, and in pain. You know what's more fun than a ride on a one-horse open sleigh? Drinking inside in front of a fireplace, or anything. Anything is more fun. Thank you for sharing. I laughed. I once had a car breakdown at the very beginning of my relationship with the girl of my dreams. However, me being underage couldn't rent a car, but I could rent a U-Haul. For just $20 a day and put a few dollars for extra mileage, I rented a U-Haul and was on my way to her house to pick her up for what promised to be the most awkward date of her life. Until I pulled up, that is. For you see, once I arrived I saw her family moving boxes from storage, and they had a lot of stuff. Like, a lot. And they saw me pull up in a U-Haul and thought I was just the greatest help. So I instead had to help them all day with boxes. No date for me. But we're engaged now, so yeah. In a thread full of depressing stories, I'm really glad you posted this. I went on a date with my girlfriend to a bridge on a river that turned out to be the first date with her really crappy ex. And if that wasn't enough, as we left we walked by a load of druggies dealing H. Here sweetie, I bought you some dope to help you forget about him. Cooked Valentine dinner for an ex back in like 2002. Was making some chicken. Put it in a pot to cook. Me and girl hang out while cooking. Get a little preoccupied. Afterward I think, Oh crap, the chicken run to kitchen naked. Go to grab lid off. Apparently I used my roommate's pressure cooker. I didn't know what a pressure cooker was, but I do now. I forced the lid open and got boiling water all over my stomach, arms, and crotch. Spent Valentine's Day in a getting burns treated. An even hotter evening than you expected. I surprised my fiancée at her work with a bouquet of flowers. She thought it was creepy and told people I snuck into her work and security had to change the codes. I simply walked up to receptionist and said I had a delivery for her and was escorted there. Turns out she was having an affair with her boss and was gaslighting me to make me look like the bad guy. It clicked for me because I always thought the only difference between a creepy gesture and a romantic one is how you feel about the person doing it. There was a girl in high school I liked. Left a note with a rose and a poem on it in her locker. Next day the principal called my parents and security took me into their office to ask me why I was harassing her. Embarrassing AF. Bought a bouquet for my girlfriend. Her mom took a look at them and said they were poisonous. Girlfriend now thinks I tried to kill her. Spent a month and a half teaching myself how to make origami roses because she liked origami and was not big on flowers. She had said numerous times she thought origami roses were really charming though. I hid it from her as best as I could. I spent hours on YouTube trying to figure this out. I wanted to burn my own house down on numerous occasions because of the amount of struggle involved here. Thought this was going to be romantic AF. Made 12, each with stems and leaves and each one was a different color. Put them in a vase and presented them to her. Her reaction was about the equivalent of "that's nice." Pretty much zero appreciation. I would also like to point out how ridiculously difficult origami is, and I have utmost respect for people that do this proficiently. If you are good at origami, hats off, and I hope it came more naturally to you than it did me. I wanted to play in traffic for the duration of trying to learn this. It's amazing how something so seemingly simplistic can be so impossible to execute. Was my girlfriend's and I 3-year anniversary. Before I left for work I set up a rose petal bed, including a flower arrangement, and a gift. I left work early to pick her up for our dinner reservation. When I got to her house she still needed some time to get ready. While she gets ready she likes to play music on her laptop. So I went to change the song and her messenger app was open, with my friend's name at the top. Turns out she slept with my friend at my house a few nights prior while I was drunk. This actually happened this morning. LOL. I am planning a surprise birthday party for my wife. I'm renting a beach house and flying a few of her friends in to celebrate for a weekend. My wife handles most of our finances and watches them like a hawk. So in order to keep this a surprise I applied for a new credit card to pay for everything. We have a pretty good income, so I don't expect her to be upset over the amount that will be spent. I got the new credit card in the mail and hid it. Well, she found it, thought I had a gambling problem or something worse that would require me to hide money. I explained why I had it, but basically had to give up the surprise. Bummer. Dude, secret Christmas presents would have been a much better excuse. Bought my wife diamond earrings. She opened them and said, but they're not the same cut as my ring. I can't wear them. Now ex-wife. That lady sounds exhausting. Got 2 rings. One with my sun and stars and one with moon of my life carved on them. We were big Game of Thrones fans. When we broke up I tossed mine into a drawer. He gave his to his new girlfriend. Ouch, that hurts. My ex and I had necklaces that formed together to make a heart, with one having "I love you" engraved on it and "I know" engraved on the other. He put a video on his Snapchat story of him burning it in a fire with everything else I gave him. Fun times. I lived in a small country town and we had a huge ice storm that lasted 2 weeks. All the power in the town was out, so I'm not exaggerating when I say it was pitch black everywhere. It had been a while since my girlfriend and I saw each other due to the entire town being iced over, including the roads. So on Valentine's night I got her a rose and walked miles to get to her through pitch black woods, loud winds, and what I'm pretty sure I heard was wolves nearby. When I gave her the rose she brushed it off like nothing really happened. Broke up with me the next day and I saw her with another guy later on that she told me not to worry about before. My boyfriend sent me flowers at work once. The guys in my office all started calling them guilt flowers because they weren't sent to me for any particular reason. They figured he must have done something wrong. I overthought this and made myself believe they were right. When my boyfriend got home, he found out what happened and never sent me flowers again. Sorry, you work amongst immature dipshits. Wife and I spent a full day of heavy labor digging in flower beds and planting at our new house. That evening after showering, both our backs hurt from the effort, so I had her lie down and gave her a deep back rub. She proceeded to return favor, but instead of just using massage oil like I did on her, she used icy hot Bengay kind of stuff. Felt great. She got bold and had me turn over so she could massage the front of my thighs. I of course go to full attention, so she grabs it and starts to work on that too, using the icy hot stuff all over her hands as lubricant. Ever put that stuff on your balls? Word of advice, don't. It's like a perpetual baseball bat to the nutsack until it wears off an hour later. Gave my wife a private fireworks show for her birthday on a July 4th when we first started dating. It was in the woods at night in an unfamiliar state. She thought I was going to murder her. I shaved my chest hair in form of her name. I thought I was being cute. Spent the entire afternoon by the poolside with a t-shirt on while she swam like a dolphin with her friends. Hahaha, I'd laugh at you too. My so wants to tattoo his last name on his back, and I don't understand why. It's just tacky, I guess, lol. For me and my husband's first wedding anniversary, I did this whole scavenger hunt 5 senses thing, where I got gifts for the 5 senses. I spent weeks scrapbooking the cards together and writing the clues and how they related to the 5 senses act. On top of that, I spent close to $1,000 buying the gifts. They included a PS3, all of Avatar: The Last Airbender, Naruto Shippuden, PS3 games, Naruto and Call of Duty, vape juice, taste, movies, and some other crap I can't remember. The morning of, I carefully got up super early and hid everything. When he got up, I had him start. He was bored with the scavenger hunt, asking why I couldn't just give it to him. Ended up just showing him where everything was. He didn't read the cards. The only thing he ever used was the anime and PS3, and he literally complained about it all, saying I didn't get the right game or Naruto episodes, or ISHLD have gotten the PS4 instead. I was devastated. Never did anything else like that again, even since we been separated. Side note, I was pregnant and the only one working as well. I flew cross country to surprise her. I had spent weeks working on a model of her aircraft in the Air Force, including painting it with the correct tail number and spending hours getting the crew chief hair color right. She was a crew chief. Left it on her doorstep with a note since I knew she was out. Figured she would call when she got it. She never noticed it and I ended up calling her. Once she realized I was in town, she was pissed. Said she was gonna deck me for trying to surprise her. Now she is my ex-wife after 14 years. I guess I should have known earlier. That is such a unique and awesome idea. Kudos to you for making the effort. I was seeing a girl who I really liked. She also seemed to really like me as well. One day I wanted to buy her flowers as a random act of kindness. She told me she didn't want me to buy her flowers. Okay, so a week later I went out to my friend's farm and picked flowers for her instead. I was proud of myself with the colors I chose and filling in around the sides. It looked like a bouquet you would buy at a store. When I saw her that night, I showed them to her. She proceeded to laugh and call me gay. She almost forgot them when she was going home and she just left them in the backseat of her car until they died. I stopped talking to her shortly after. Good riddance, my man. What has made you nope right the frick out of a sexual encounter? Went for a Facebook booty call a while back. Her 7 and 9-year-old daughters kept walking in and she told me just to ignore them. She also insisted on blaring George Strait while we went at it. Between her kids walking in and all my exes live in Texas blaring from her speakers, I just couldn't do it. Nope the frick out. We were in his car fooling around after leaving the bar together. I asked why we couldn't go back his house. Said his wife was home. Nope. He didn't want to wake her up. How considerate of him. This is my favorite story to tell. I'm a type 1 diabetic and my nickname where I'm from is diabetes, so everyone knows I have it, even though some people would still be like, oh, you're actually a diabetic anyways. I met this girl at a house party one of my friends was throwing. This was back in 2010 to 2011. As the night goes on and drinks get consumed, we get all love drunk and go to bang it out. About halfway through our session, she randomly kicks me off and pushes me away. Stop, I can't do this. I freak out thinking that I have done something horribly wrong. What's going on? What happened? She looks straight at me and I crap you not says to me, I can't catch diabetes. All I could think to say was, you've got to be freaking kidding me. Her incredible response, and again, I swear on my inability to produce insulin. I'm not making any of this up. This is word for word burned into my memory. I can't get diabetes. It's like cancer. I just can't catch it. By the time she said cancer, I had my pants back on and was running down the stairs. I get back to the party and all my friends are like, oh, look who it is. How was it? You will never believe what the frick just happened to me. TLDR. My type 1 diabetes not only cock-blocked me but is apparently an STD similar to cancer. She wasn't lying. She really can't catch diabetes. I used to have hepatitis, but I swear I'm clean now. We had a party at my house. Roommates. I passed out sitting on the couch. I woke up with a raging hard-on and my roommate's wife, in only her pink bathrobe, was rubbing my dong through my pants while her husband was lustfully watching. I jumped up, spilled my beer all over myself and went to bed. I was about 16 and at this girl's house for a hookup type thing. We start getting to second base when she says, "Go away, grandpa." Confused as heck, I ask her what she meant. She said her grandfather died in the room, in the bed we were doing crap on, and he was trying to join in with us. I noped the frick out of Frisky Grandpa's House of Horrors and never called her again. Frisky Grandpa's House of Horrors. I'm so glad I scrolled down so far into this thread, frick. I was a nope person, and I don't blame the dude. Short version. I started crying about my ex and threw up. I literally never throw up from drinking, so that was a weird one for me. At least we were in my place and I made it to the bathroom. Yeah, he noped, and I cried and begged him not to leave. After that I decided that drinking with a broken heart is a bad idea. Holy crap, I've done this exact same thing. In high school, freshman year, I dated this girl for about a month. When we had sex for the first time, she rips off the condom, says she want me to drop my seed inside her cause she wants to start a family. Pulled my pants up and left immediately. Year later she has a kid with her new boyfriend. Shivers. Asked her if she was clean and she said yeah. It's a long story but a lot of stuff happened and it turns out that now I can't get STDs. I thought to myself, you know what? Nah, I don't want to have sex that bad, and left. Or she meant there are none left to get because she has them all. At the bar one night and it was pretty packed. I finally made it to the bar and this definite cougar comes over and starts hitting on me hard. I talk her up a bit, but play it cool. She's not bad looking, but not sure if I'm down just yet. I finally ask her what she'll have to drink. I wanted to just go ahead and buy her the drink so maybe she'd back off a bit since I knew that's what she wanted. Got her some sugary mixed shot and after she threw it back, leaned in lightning fast and laid her lips on me. I pulled back after a second as this hot younger chick ran up and screamed, "Mom, get out of here. You're ruining my night." Instantly turned around and got away from that fricked up family reunion. You did the right thing for sure, boo. But on the other hand, you could have also gone for the sportsman's double. Prior to divorce, wife wanted to have unprotected sex out of nowhere after literally 6 months of refusing to put out, and I suspected she was trying to get pregnant to prevent the impending separation. Nope. Or she'd barebacked someone else and wanted you to foot the bill. I felt something rubbing against me while I was inside her, and after feeling around and there I removed a very grey, very soggy, old tampon. That was the end of the night. You probably saved her a trip to the air. Super into this guy. After a few dates we're at his place. We're taking clothes off and he leaves the room to go to the washroom. I'm in bed waiting for him to return and feel something in the bed. It's a hot dog in a bun. Clearly a few days old, maybe older, with the fixings. He comes in, sees it and my horrified face, says he's so sorry, he'll get rid of it and proceeds to eat it. A gentleman would have shared. A girl I used to date and I were freaking in the dark. Unbeknownst to me, my nose started bleeding. I went to grab her tea and they were wet af. It took me a little while to realize what was going on, but once I did I immediately stopped. It was pretty embarrassing as she was covered in blood. It was a really hot summer with no AC, so apparently she just thought I was sweating intensely. Finding out that the guy, who at the moment had me in a very uncompromising position, got off on the idea of forcefully infecting others with HIV, I didn't stick around long enough to see if he was actually serious. I stopped hooking up for a good long while after that one. That's pretty freaking scary. Got to his place, walked into a room and saw that it was completely bare except for a couple of lights and a tarp spread across the floor. Immediately turned around and walked out the door, got in my car and left. Don't know what the tarp was for. He was either going to murder me or wanted me to pee on him. Either way, nope. She took off her shoes and the smell could have killed a horse. Nearly killed me. Smelled like a hobo in a recycling room. The mood was killed. I was nearly killed. I left both disgusted and concerned. Pretty girl though. Almost lost my virginity but didn't because of Pokemon. I was a teenage virgin in a long distance relationship. Boyfriend calls, says his parents will be out of town and I should come over. I scramble, trying to figure out what people wear to sex. And we didn't even have a Walmart in my town to buy lingerie, let alone somewhere classy. I make the 2-hour drive. We start making out in his bed, get a little hot and heavy, and I undress down to my sexiest bra and underwear. He gets up and goes to his desk, and I assume he's getting a condom, which got him huge bonus points because I was a virgin and didn't really know how to ask about stuff like that. Instead he pulls out a sketchbook, beams at me, opens to a page and goes, "See this drawing of Charmander I made?" I say, "Yes," and then he comes back to bed and starts flipping through his sketchbook, showing me his Pokemon drawings while I sit there in my bra and underwear, stunned by the turn of events. We do this for a good 15 minutes, then later he tries to get us started up again but I was just not having it. We fell asleep, still virgins, and woke up to watch Power Rangers because why the frick not at that point, right? When this girl I was hooking up with kept talking about how babies brighten her day, then she insisted we didn't use a condom. Wise move, my friend. Had a great first date with this one, a blast. Went back to her place, started to hit it doggy. She reaches over to her nightstand and pulls out a roll-up pouch, unrolls it and pulls out a syringe. Ask me if I ever tried H. Insta limp dong. I broke the frick out so quick I don't even remember getting dressed. I have a few instances I can think of. 1. While in the middle of losing my virginity after sneaking a boy into my room, in the wee hours of the morning, he suddenly jumped up and started pacing the floor. He really needed to crap. So I said the bathroom was immediately outside my door to the right. He opens the door and then slams it shut. My dad was in the kitchen, which was in clear view of my bedroom door. He ended up just standing there and crapping himself. I'll never forget that smell. And I didn't have air freshener, so I sprayed some flying insect spray that had a sweet smell to it. Anyway, when the coast was clear, I escort him to the bathroom where he gets in the shower. I had to make it look like it was me showering. Therefore I had to sit there in the bathroom while his crappy boxers stunk up the place. He gets out, puts his boxers in a few plastic bags and changes into fresh clothes. Then tries to continue the sex. I was like, you can go out the window. We still keep in touch on FB and he uses that as a funny story to tell our mutual friends. 2. I picked a dude up at a bar who was hands down the funniest person I'd ever met, and that was severely attractive to me. It also helped that he was severely attractive. While going down on me, he asked me if I could take some pictures of him with his phone. I grab it and as I'm taking the picture, his girlfriend sends him a goodnight text. I just hand him the phone and he lets out an exhausted sigh. She won't stop telling me she loves me, and I don't want lead her on. Okay, kind of uncomfortable, but the coitus continues. He starts to get very rough with me, biting everywhere, making my lips bleed, calling me a W, basically using me as a sex doll, which would have been fine if discussed beforehand. I don't like to be ambushed. Then he grabs me by the throat and demanded I told him I loved him. Freaked me the frick out because of his crazy eyes. I had this intense sense of dread that's hard to describe. but it felt like in that moment I was in danger. So I just pushed him off of me, grabbed my clothes, completely wordless, and literally walked into the apartment complex hallway naked where I got dressed on the stairs. 3. And last but not least, the guy who, while I was lying naked on his bed waiting for him, proceeds to casually pull out a needle from his nightstand and shoots up right in front of me. He slid into the floor giggling and I just got dressed and left without him even noticing. You win this thread, and my sympathy. Very blatant, very obvious, genital warts. He said there were skin tags. B, I know warts when I see 'em. I don't need that crap in my butt. I don't need that crap in my butt. Poetic. Had third date sex. Things were going well and then as we're lying there she says now that we're in a relationship I need to be the one in charge. That means no P and I need to access your Facebook account and email so that I know you aren't cheating on me. I noped out of that one. I was on vacation in the Dominican shortly after graduating high school with 5 of my friends. Met this cute Bolivian girl on our resort and we hit it off. Few hours later I'm in her room. We're going at it. She repositions onto her hands and knees and tells me to put it in her butt. I ask for lube and she hands me a bottle. I was giddy with excitement cause I had always wanted to do anal. I lather both of us up and slowly slide in, but she had clearly done this a few times before. Now I'm pumping her hard and have thrown caution to the wind. We hear a key card go into her door and the handle turn. She frantically whispers novio, boyfriend, and I realize I have about 3 seconds before I get my butt beat. I pull out at lightning speed and she yelps. Liquid crap sprays all over my stomach and dong. I grab my shorts off the floor and run out the balcony door and hop the ledge. Thank God that room was on the first floor. I don't think the guy chased me but I sprinted anyway. Still very naked and definitely covered in crap. I cleaned myself in the ocean and hit the bar. I just love the image of her boyfriend coming in and seeing her naked on the bed with a stream of crap all over the mattress. I was eating a lady out on her couch when she stopped me. She rolled onto the floor and reverse army crawled into her dog's bed and told me to take her there. Her 2 cocker spaniels were now awake standing at attention on the side of their bed. I noped the frick out of that scene. I was almost ready to start dating again after a nice long break and after reading this thread I think I'm just going to stay single. Met a girl at a club and went back to her house. Everything is going fine, nothing out of the ordinary, until her housemate comes home. I was like maybe we should stop, or at least close the door. She replies with oh no, it's okay. He likes to listen and sometimes he watches from the hallway. She wasn't joking either. I put my clothes back on and walked out, and there he was fapping away in the fricking hallway. That was her husband, dude. Went to a very alternative punk girl's place for a booty call. She said she wanted to take a bath together and I was all for it. She goes to run water while I finish my drink. We're getting into it and head to the bathroom. We strip down and I get in the bathtub and sit down. Then I looked up at her and she was pulling razor blades out of a cabinet. She wanted to cut me and have me cut her. Nope. I've never gone from soaking wet to fully clothed and walking down a sidewalk so quickly in my life. I ghosted that girl and have no regrets. She started rubbing my chest in the exact same way my ex used to, and I realized I was still super in love with her and started to cry. So she noped the frick out of there. Not sure which of you I feel more sorry for. It was after a hookup. I wanted to leave and he tried to cling on me saying, oh please, don't go. I want to show you to my roommate. Spoiler alert, his roommate was in the freezer in pieces. Whenever she took her panties off it immediately smelled like 8 cans of shark crap. Told her I needed a cigarette and hit Mach 3 out of there. I let a woman take me home from a pub here in Edinburgh. She seemed a little bit sleazy but she had these J-cup boobs. Honestly, that had sort of got stuck in my eye and imagination. When we got to her place it was about 2 AM. There were like 7 kids running around in the flat, eating cake and candy and drinking Iron Brew straight from 2-liter bottles. They were, most of them about 12 or less years of age, except one sullen 16-17-year-old boy who sprawled in a chair staring at me, and a dog running around. I went to the toilet and there was dog crap in the bathtub. The wheels for my mega boob fantasy night had just fallen off the wagon. I sort of didn't know what to do at first. I didn't want to stay, but I didn't want to tell her in front of her little tribe that I wanted to bail and then have to sit there and wait for a taxi to turn up on the outskirts of the city in a housing estate and risk some sort of confrontation that could turn into a horror show. So, I went to bed and fooled around a little bit and then claimed to be too drunk. She drove me home in the morning. No way was I getting involved with that scene. Except one sullen 16-17-year-old boy who sprawled in a chair staring at me. This part just makes my heart hurt. Must be so hard for that kid to have a mom like that, and he's left to raise his brothers and sisters. It was late. I was doing the deed with a guy at his place from a hookup app when out of the corner of my eye I see another dude sitting there jerking it. I flew out of there. WTF. We need more details. My ex didn't have a condom, so he wanted to use a sandwich bag instead. I left with so many unanswered questions in my head, like, did this guy really ask to use a sandwich bag? Is that thing? Are people really using sandwich bags as protection? During my drunken single heyday, I met a woman at a bar during my friend's birthday outing with whom I hit it off. We even made out in one of the restrooms. Sleazy, I know. We get back to her place and she informs me that her roommate will be home soon. Turns out he was her on and off again boyfriend who had helped her, financially, to get through her cancer treatment. Overwhelmed and quite uncomfortable, I decided to bolt, despite her insistence. After I left her apartment, I managed to get myself lost in the building and couldn't find a viable exit. I ended up having to crawl out of a window and managed to get out onto the side street near the building. I walked toward the main drag and ran into the birthday boy. We had a drink and parted ways. Single life in NYC never gets old. This chick who I kinda had a thing for a long time started making out with me at a party, but she was biting my lip and face really hard. Then she told me she wanted me to frick her in the butt while showing me videos of her boyfriend jerking off. Went down with my magic fingers and felt some squishy. Too squishy. Turns out it was a soaking wad of toilet paper that got left behind. She pulled out her false teeth and offered me a gummer. Lost all the giblets in the front of her mouth in a car accident. For the sake of contributing to this post, we'll say I said no. God, this is the kind of stuff I scroll to the bottom for. Catfish. Clearly the person was handsome in their youth, had done a bunch of drugs and wore it on their face, and used pictures of someone else that looked a little like they used too. Early internet data here. Ran into a string of girls who were recovering H addicts. They all used pictures from when they were on H because they were skinnier back then. She asked me to carve my name in her back with a rather large knife while I fricked her butt. There were other names. Sounds like a non-app writing prompt. We were only 13. Summer fling. She was very adamant about wanting to frick, which I found both exciting and frightening considering I had never heard a girl talk like that before, and also didn't quite understand what that implied. We were hanging out unsupervised with a few friends at a house party and snuck off to some bedroom. Clothes came off and some kind of instinct took over me. I just knew that I had to put my face down there and finally figure out what this pee thing was all about. Maybe rub my face in it and see what happens. Well, as soon as I got down there, the most god-awful stench hit me. Like the first time you smell a rotting, dead animal. The smell of death. A primal, archetypal, ancestral memory that rushes to the surface and says, "Stop what you're doing right now. Something is wrong." I don't even remember what my excuse was, but I managed to calmly pull her panties back up, say something stupid and get the frick out. Years later I realized she probably had a yeast infection and didn't know. Also the way she was at 13, in general, not just the unusually high libido, implied she was being abused, probably by her father. After that summer, she mailed me a photo of herself spread eagle on a bed, photographer unknown, with a pretty explicit handwritten letter, which my mom opened and read. Good times. That crap was traumatic enough that it helped delay losing my virginity for a little too long. But I'm so freaking glad I didn't lose it to her. Girl in college asked me if I could pick up a specific cologne for our date. As it wasn't too expensive and I didn't currently have one, I agreed. Fast forward to the end of the date. She comes to take my shirt off and says, you smell like my dad." I was out. Went to my buddy's girlfriend's place with him and ended up fingering his GF's twin sister. She smelled horrible, though I was too drunk to tell until afterwards. I noped out of sex at that moment and we ended up leaving very soon after. Apparently she smelled so bad my fingers reeked and the guys were gagging in the car on the ride home. So they made me hold my hand out the window the entire ride home. This was midwinter in Ontario, Canada. So they made me hold my hand out the window the entire ride home. This was midwinter in Ontario, Canada. Not their fault you grappled with the cooter of doom. Are you circumcised? No, I'm not. I want to lick your dong cheese. Instant mood killer. For the record, I don't have any smegma. I make sure my junk is always clean. I knew a few guys I noped out on that could fulfill that for them. Was fricking this girl doggy style and she started crapping everywhere. Guess you can say I literally fricked the crap out of her. It wasn't nearly as bad as most of these, but my puppy walked over, lay her down next to my foot, sighed and laid her head down on my foot. It was so dang cute that it made sex super weird. I had to stop immediately. Yeah, was having sex with a girl who had a colorful history. Anyway, I was definitely wrapping it up and I had fingers her a bit. We start having sex and then this smell hits me. So bad. Like, sewer bad. Rotten flesh is what it smelled like. Anyway, I quickly end it before finishing and walk her to the bus stop ASAP. I get home and my apartment still smells so freaking bad. I end things with this girl and move on, but a week later I can still smell this, but not all the time. Turns out it wasn't the girl. It was a bag of spoiled sausages I must have thrown out my window when I was drunk or something, and it had been sitting in the sun, now mostly green, right under my window. The one I didn't open often but had opened the night I was sleeping with this girl because cuddles had made it so hot. Oh man. For those who have witnessed a wedding objection during the speak now or forever hold your peace portion, what happened? I was working at a wedding when I was younger. I was running the bar at the reception, which was very close to the hall the weddings were at. We were told that the reception would begin around 4 PM. It was already about 3ish and I was packing fridges, the usual barman things, while one of the male guests was still sitting there drinking. I asked if he was not joining the reception, to which he replied something along the lines of "when I have the courage." He downs his drink and leaves. 10 minutes later he's back, looking extremely disappointed. Guy orders a drink, and less than 30 seconds later another guy who's dressed extremely well, turned out to be the groom, walks in, punches him in the back of the head, and leaves. This dude just picked his drink up and sipped it further. I eventually found out that this dude had downed his drink, walked into the receptions down, admitted to sleeping with the wife on her hen night, and again the night before the wedding. He was never invited to the wedding. He just felt the groom needed to know, so he found out where the wedding was, suited up and dropped the info mid-ceremony. The groom deserved to know his bride-to-be was cheating on him, but it seems unnecessarily dramatic to tell him at the wedding of all times. This was in the early 70s in semi-rural Washington state. My cousin was getting married, and my aunt and the mother of the groom did not get along well. During the ceremony, when the pastor got to the part about objecting, my aunt said something to my uncle and the groom's mom jumped up and grabbed my aunt and they started going at it, all the way out the door and into the parking area. They were separated, and everyone filed back into the barn, where the wedding continued. The best part though was when another one of my cousins simply walked into the woods after the wedding because that's where he lived. Story is great, but I'm upvoting that last sentence. My aunt was getting married to her second husband, and during the speak now or forever hold your peace bit, their baby started crying. The dude officiating it said if anyone older than 6 months has any objections, speak now or forever hold your peace. He got a laugh and the wedding carried on. They're still together 10 years later, so I guess whatever my cousin had to say was misinformed. A lot of these stories hinge on an unflappable officiant who makes a witty quip and keeps rolling. I hope people not yet married reading this thread take away the importance of hiring the right person to officiate. I bet the laugh in that room was solid. The best man at my stepsister's wedding did this. It happened at the rehearsal the night before. It was a very large wedding and the rehearsal was bigger than a lot of weddings. The minister was going over the vows quickly while giving instruction on what to do. When he said something about objections, the best man interrupted, saying he had to put a stop to this. He was in love with the bride and was sure she felt the same way. My sister and everyone else was horrified. It caused plenty of chaos and confusion. As far as I know, after that neither the bride nor groom ever spoke to him again. So worst man. To be fair, I didn't witness this, but it happened to my parents. My mom invited an ex she was still rather close with to her wedding and he stood up and yelled, "I object." Little did everyone at the wedding know, my dad had gotten rather close with him and paid him to stand up and object just for the shoots and giggles, and he bursts out laughing. My mom didn't find it as funny and it really started their marriage off on the right foot. All fun and games until the bride responds by gasping, "Oh, insert ex's name. I never stopped loving you." It was a medieval themed wedding. The best man declared his love for the bride, challenged the groom to a fight for her love. They march outside, draw swords and go at it. Apparently they choreographed 2 nights a week for like 6 months, but it honestly looked like they were trying to kill each other. The groom wins and everything goes on like normal. 0 weird but cool. I attended a wedding as a guest of a family member, and when our pastor said that, the doors busted open to the sanctuary and a man appeared and started to say "I do," but 2 huge ushers, one who was my date, quickly grabbed the guy before he could say anything but under the arms and literally lifted him up off the floor and carried him out. The wedding continued as normal. Turned out the guy was the ex of the bride. Strangest sight I ever saw. Sounds like they were forewarned that might happen. At my cousin's wedding, when the exchanging of vows took place, my aunt shouted, "Wasn't there supposed to be a part where you could object?" or something along those lines. "Aunt, I object." Minister, overruled. One of my friends interrupted his cousin's wedding to come out of the closet. He couldn't understand why people were so pissed at him. There's a time and place, and that place is definitely not a wedding and certainly not during the ceremony. When I was 13, we went to my second cousin's wedding. Everything is going great. They even got past the "speak now or forever hold your peace" part. They wrote their own vows, but before my second cousin's fiancée wife could even begin her vows, his son got up, announced to the entire room that she was cheating on his dad with her drug dealer and he couldn't let his dad marry her. My second cousin yelled at his son to either sit down or leave. The son left. My second cousin married her anyways, and 5 years and 1 baby later he finds out it was true and they separated, but were too tweaked out to be able to afford a divorce. Finally he got married a 3rd time, but before he could get married, his 3rd now ex-wife had to pay for their divorce. This wedding had no objections. They moved to Missouri, and this time, instead of separating or asking for a divorce, he decided he didn't want to be married anymore and just moved back to Cali to get back together with his 2nd ex-wife. Yet family dinners are a little awkward. "How's the son doing?" Groom's dad interrupted the wedding to ask the bride's father whether or not she was truly a virgin. Then he went on about how he didn't know anything of the wedding and blah blah blah. Truly weird and embarrassing. I was there with an ex-boyfriend. When the groom's father interrupted the wedding, the bride's father, officiating the wedding, did in fact say it was confirmed. I have no clue how or what. They seemed to be super conservative and wore sleeved dresses, long hair, etc., and were Afro-American. They eventually showed the father-in-law out and continued with the ceremony, which was super awkward afterwards. It was literally as if I was on Pranked. Said ex seemed to find the ordeal entertaining because she was humiliated. This was his family, bride, and that sort of sealed the deal. Something was wrong with the guy. We broke up a week later. It is worse if father of the bride could actually answer that question accurately. Got booted out of my cousin's wedding reception with about 20 other people. My cousin had her wedding on a farm with a massive pig roast. From what I remember, there was a massive amount of people. Anyway, her father and my other older cousin never really got along. At one point during the reception, my older cousin had enough and absolutely lost it. He looked at a handful of us and asked if we had his back. Of course we all nodded, not really knowing what was about to happen. He disappeared and a few minutes later comes back with a 20-pound bag of pork meat from the leftover roast. He walks down to where my cousin's dad is. My aunt proceeds to yell, "Lonnie no," and smacks him right in the side of the face with the bag of meat. An all-out family brawl ensued. The whole family hasn't been invited to a wedding ever since. At my own wedding, but not in the traditional way. We were getting married along a river at the end of summer and tons of wakeboarders and boats were out. I was a ball of nerves and the ceremony felt so serious. When all of a sudden some dude bro on a boat blasting music screamed "Don't do it bro" and sped off. It was actually hilarious and made the rest of the ceremony a lot more fun. My husband and I cracked up even though his brothers looked like they were about to jump in the river after the guy. On mobile. Sorry for formatting issues. Witnessed this a few months ago. Random guest stood up and proceeded to basically declare his love for the bride and pour his heart out, saying that it should been him up on the altar that day. Whole room went dead silent. Bride went red with embarrassment and groom went red with anger. Best man promptly called for DJ MC to start playing music. All this was in front of the random person's wife. Didn't go down too well. I once went to a wedding where both families were Irish. GF knew them but I didn't. At the ceremony, the groom's ex-wife started shouting crap and was gently directed outside. I couldn't hear what was said. The reception was amazing. Nice venue and all, but a bunch of guests had brought their own instruments and just started jamming what I can only describe as a genuine Irish jig. This went on for hours and remains a lasting memory of oral beauty. But I digress. There was a lot of booze. There was no responsible serving of alcohol and I'm certain it was by design. At some point I used the men's room and was curious if I'd just seen the groom in a stall. Door open. With someone who was not the bride. I didn't know these people and it might have just been someone else, so said nothing. Some time later and the GF states seriously we should get going now. Yeah sure. We grab our crap and head downstairs. I see the suspicious fellow again in the stairwell going to absolute town on this same lady. GF grabs my arm tightly and keeps walking past. Mumbles a thank you for the invite. I just smile and follow cause it's all weird. Yep, that was the groom. Octopusing his ex-wife. At his own wedding to another woman. The bride genuinely seemed a gem. The look that woman gave us as we passed was this smugly dominant I always get what I want. Frick yeah drunk as frick glare. Wow. They had some reasonable bubbly in a tub for people to take home and who would know or care if we hawked a few extras. I got it all explained to me after we were in a cab and well on our way home. I never got a follow up to that story, but 10/10 on the music, would tag along to an Irish wedding again. Once the traditional music, that's what you referred to as a jig, still very popular in Ireland starts playing it will usually get a bit chaotic I found. I was best man at a wedding and the groom's older sister decided to play a joke and stood up and said I object then started giggling. Groom's mother stood up slapped her told her it was not an appropriate joke and told her to go home. This mother still refuses to talk to her daughter 4 years later. I'm guessing that mother-daughter relationship wasn't exactly rock solid to start with. Went to a co-worker's wedding and the maid of honor objected and admitted to being the other woman and that the groom had been cheating with her for months. The bride left in tears and the groom immediately tried to get with the mom, but she told him she wasn't gonna hurt the bride further and that he needs to frick off. The bride is doing much better and is now a manager here, and I haven't heard from the groom in over a year. The mom and bride are on speaking terms, but I don't think their relationship is gonna ever be what it used to be. I don't know what's shittier. Sleeping with her friend's fiance or waiting until the middle of a, presumably expensive, wedding to tell her, and, presumably, in front of a crowd of friends and family. It was at my wedding that we had at my grandmother's house who lives out in the country next to a cattle farm. The cows didn't make a peep till that moment and one finally went moo. We all laughed and continued but it was a funny moment about my wedding. I had cows mooing at my wedding too, except it was constantly, through the whole ceremony. I was at an Orthodox Jewish wedding with a chuppah ceremony where they read a contract and recite 7 blessings. The groom's dad pinched his son's derriere at a most solemn moment, caused him to loudly shriek into the silent audience of 400. Bride saw and snorted loudly. They also publicly kissed after the ceremony, which was a huge scandal. I don't understand that. If someone objected and get thrown out during the ceremony anyway, then why would they open the chance for them to object in the first place? Can't they just cut off that line and let the bride and groom kiss in peace? Not speak now part, but well, you'll see. Friend of mine was getting married in the park under the trees because both of them were nature people, and groom had a dog that went everywhere with him that wasn't allowed in any church because dog, despite being well trained and quiet. There were some rows of chairs with lots of people filling them, including groom's mother who was sitting with his dog. Bride and groom were at the front with the officiant. Officiant begins. Officiant comes to the part where he says, "Do you take?" Groom's dog, Shadow, began to howl aloud. Long, mournful howl. Everyone laughed. Officiant started the question again. Loud, long, mournful howl again. Everyone laughed. Groom told Shadow to come to the front. Shadow ran up, stood directly in between the bride and groom, and the officiant started again. Not a peep from Shadow. Her vows. His vows. Officiant looked at Shadow and asked, "Shadow, do you take bride and groom to be your lawfully wedded parents?" Shadow barked one single bark. Officiant concluded the ceremony. Everyone cheered and clapped, and Shadow barked 3 times. The only times that he made any sounds. Not kidding. Beautiful dog too. A wedding I was at, one guy got up and pledged his undying love for the bride, followed by 4 or 5 others objecting for various reasons, including one guy's love for the groom. By the 2nd or 3rd objection, though, it was clear that the whole thing was a clever ruse. I found out later that it was all set up by the bride as a prank on the unsuspecting groom and family and friends. It was pretty hilarious. Should have had the guys fight over it for extra comedic effect. But yeah, 3 including the gay guy is enough. My boyfriend was friends with a guy who was getting a quickie marriage and needed witnesses. We agreed and went inside the little reception room, where the preacher, bride, and the groom were lined up, waiting on us. The preacher started his thing and I noticed a woman come in and lean against the back wall. She looked standing with her arms crossed. "Preacher, is there anyone here today who objects to the union of and? Please, speak now." The couple looked back at us and we both smiled. Suddenly, the bride's attention turned to the woman in the back of the room. "Bride, what the F is she doing here?" The woman quickly raises her hand, looking at the old preacher. "Woman, I object. I don't agree with this marriage." The bride glares at her. "Bride, shut up. B. Wait your freaking turn. It's my scheduled day. You're just mad you didn't think of it first." The woman had to be dragged out of the room, kicking and screaming and spitting at the bride. After the reception, my BF's friend explained that he was originally in a relationship with the bride. After 10 years together, he started sleeping with her sister, the woman. They were close sisters, until both ladies got pregnant by him. Simultaneously, they fought each other like cats and dogs for the next several years, until the 2 cousins became school-aged and best friends. Neither one of the sisters would give up the man, and he wasn't sure which one he loved more, so he kept seeing both women. Last I heard they were all still together, but the 2 sisters had teamed up to take down his pregnant mistress. What the frick? My friend almost paid me to do it at my dad's marriage and I was so close to agreeing, but my dad overheard and stopped me. I would have done it for free if I knew how freaking crazy that stupid woman was back then. Here in the UK there's financial sanctions if the reason isn't good enough, i.e., doing it for a laugh. My friends knew me very well and warned me in advance. Nobody had said speak now, but the groom's ex still decided to get up and scream that he was her soulmate, that she forgave him for this whole thing, and that they should leave now because he'd proven his point by breaking up with her 5 years earlier, falling in love, and holding a wedding. I ate so much cake and got so drunk at that wedding. Meanwhile everyone else was screaming and throwing crap. Good times. The bride was my boyfriend's ex. No idea why they invited us. Either your boyfriend or the groom's ex were invited because the other was a don't ask your ex to the wedding or I'll be inviting mine too kind of move. A friend of the couple's in cosplay armor, think Master Chief, ran in, asked the date, said then I'm not too late, pointed a big, fake spacey rifle at the bride and said mother of the Xenocide, the fruit of thy womb will never destroy my planet. Die. Not her name. And the groom went her name is, her name. Seriously? Seriously? This is date, yes, comma time, yes, comma almost right location, oh, no, you want other, very similar location, one so commonly confused the invitations had mentioned it, oh, my bad, have a nice day, theater majors, man, I do not even. That's funny but I cringed. Not at a wedding but at a funeral, a young man, mid-20s had passed away rather suddenly in some sort of accident. His wife of a year or so and their respective families and friends are all in attendance as they are getting ready to lower him into the ground. The pastor dude asks if anyone would like to say anything further and another woman in her early 30s stood up. She began to tell everyone in attendance about how much pain she was in over the loss of the love of her life and that the two of them were meant going to be together and now they can't. Yup, the poor wife had to find out about the cheating at the funeral. Whoa, that woman sounds absolutely heinous. Like the dead guy is a dickhead too. But to do that at his funeral, to his family. 2. I have one of these. My friend, groom, was getting married to this awful girl we all hated. They broke up during the rehearsal dinner after arguing about the order the groomsmen would stand in. She wanted her brother higher in the order. Wedding still happened the next day, even though they were broken up. We all show up to the church not knowing if the bride would show, or what the frick would happen. She shows up. Pastor asks for the objections and her mom objects. Yells something about how the groom is a piece of crap and isn't welcome in her family. Mom leaves the church. Dad and brother leave after her. Bride is just standing there staring at the groom with a real smug look on her face and says, "Told you you should have put my brother second in line instead of fifth." Pastor doesn't know what to do, but just kinda keeps on trucking and eventually they're married. Drank a crap ton at the reception. We all did. Also they're divorced now. Didn't even make it a whole year. My wife drugged me to a wedding that I did not want to be at years ago, but I'm forever grateful that she did because I was able to witness one of the greatest spectacles of human drama that has ever taken place. This was like an episode of Jerry Springer mixed with Cops. Bride's lover spoke up at that moment and yelled, "I'll be goddamned if I'm gonna keep my mouth shut and let you steal my woman. You sorry piece of crap." This deranged old redneck proceeds to come at the groom with a pistol threatening to shoot him if he doesn't give her up. It wasn't a huge wedding. Maybe 40 or so people, but every single one of them went screaming and running and maybe 2 people stayed and called the cops. I grabbed my wife's hand and we retreated outside to watch the rest of the scene unfold from the church window. I went to a wedding when I was 5. It was between my older brother and his fiancée. Anyways, they said the whole speak now spiel and right before he was done little 5-year-old me said I object and everyone turned to me. I was dead silent because I didn't know what would happen. My dad asked me, "Well, why do you object?" and I said I did not know what would happen if I did and I was promptly seated. My cousin was big into bodybuilding when he was younger and has always been really tall. Around the time he got married he was probably 6 feet 6 inches 260 pounds. I was 18 at the time and I'll never forget when the priest asked, "Are there any objections to this union?" My cousin turned to the crowd and opened his arms wide and gestured as if daring someone to object. The whole place erupted in laughter. It was amazing. I can't imagine him with sleeves, just ripped shoulders and cuffs at his wrists. I was at an outdoor ceremony once, with a storm coming in. The pastor was trying to move things along so that we wouldn't get caught in the rain. The reception was indoors. He asked if anyone knows of any objection, and instantly, there was a loud clap of thunder. To his credit, the pastor just paused a moment and then said, "Anyone else? Alright, in that case," and finished the ceremony. I was house training my puppy and for a day or two he tried peeing on the deck as soon as he left the door. The 3rd time I caught him and hollered no and then boom, massive thunderclap. Puppy leapt off the deck, peed on the grass and has never peed the deck again. My dad insisted on having this in his and my mom's wedding because he wanted it to mean speak now or forever hold your peace, meaning my mom was his piece of butt. Almost 40 years later, they're still married. Side note, when he walked me down the aisle at my first wedding, he let me know I could still say no even 2 steps from Pachelbel's canon in E. I said nope and giggled. Silly me. We were divorced 6 years later. This happened very recently, but in a different manner than the other comments I'm seeing. For years, groom and best man are super close, room together, and the running joke is that they're more than friends. Later on, groom meets bride, falls in love, and proposes. New running joke is that best man is very disappointed that groom is marrying someone else. At the wedding, officiant asks if anyone has objections. Best man objects. Officiant quickly overrules the objection. It was planned, and bride thought it was a funny way to acknowledge the super close friendship between groom and best man. Did not result in anyone being kicked out or awkwardness. Fun and surprisingly appropriate. I was expecting this to end with the running joke turning out to be true and the groom and best man living happily ever after, lol. The groom himself. He just stood up there and started crying and, in front of everyone, told the bride that he'd fallen out of love with her a while before but he didn't know how to break it off. It was extremely uncomfortable. They both stepped out, and 10 minutes later came back out and got married, because she'd apparently told him she was pregnant. They're still together, with 3 kids, and I'm not sure about the husband but I can confirm that the wife is having an affair. Neither of them are happy, but she has a comfortable life and he doesn't have the spine to leave. This is really depressing. I'm a pastor and I officiated a wedding once where the groom had a little too much to drink before the ceremony. Not a huge deal to me, but his sister, who was a bridesmaid, found out. She got PN as I was walking down a hallway after using the restroom. I overheard her talking to him and she said something along the lines of, "If you have one more beer, I'm telling the bride what you did last night." I was unsure what to do. I felt like it wasn't my place to intervene so I didn't say anything. The wedding went fine and they are still married. I'm still curious as to what he did. Edit. Grammatical errors. I'm still super curious as to what he did. Hopefully not his sister. Husbands and wives that got divorced after 20 years of marriage, what made you decide to change your mind after all that time? My husband's parents did this. He said he knew his parents weren't happy for a long time. Said they went to family therapy together but ultimately once my husband went to the army, he was the younger of 2. They divorced and both later married other people. These 2 could not get along for anything. They hated each other. At our wedding, we had to take separate family pictures with the dad and new wife and then with the mom and my sister-in-law. It was insane. Cut to about 2 years after our wedding and I get a phone call from father-in-law's wife of 10 years. She is in hysterics. She had caught him in bed with my mother-in-law. My husband would not believe it until he talked to his father. That was over 10 years ago. My in-laws both divorced their partners and have been together ever since. My mother-in-law has all their old family pictures on display everywhere and acts like they never divorced and have been together for over 4 decades. This is a roller coaster. And that last part. Dear God. Had to watch my parents go through the paperwork to get divorced after my dad had a massive stroke and was forced to retire. It was the only way for them to keep the money from his pension and maintain his health insurance coverage. My parents got a divorce of convenience so Pops could make the mortgage payments and get his insulin. Thankfully my parents' insurance agent is a close friend and found every possible form and loophole so they could stay in the house together. It took almost 2 years to get everything settled. I'll never forget my dad's statement after it was all done. The church still says we're married, and that's what matters to us. At least now, your mother can still get her hearing aids and pay the mortgage if something happens to me. I was so disgusted with it all. I never forgave my dad's union for it, and we now make sure someone from our family shows up to their annual open meeting when they discuss the health insurance plan to shame them in explicit detail with how the board fricks over the roughnecks. Your dad must be a heck of a man. Go through with a divorce to make sure him and your mother will be taken care of. And yes, his union sucks major balls. 23 years. I had lied to her several times over the years, and she always forgave me. The last time I lied to her about accruing a severe amount of debt due to a gambling addiction. I think she might have forgiven the lie, but she couldn't forgive the addiction and the chance I start gambling again. I started attending Gamblers Anonymous after I told her, but it was too little too late for her. On the plus side, I haven't gambled in almost 3 years. My parents divorced after like 18 years due to gambling. He was a total dickhead when he was losing and I was a teenager. I was probably grounded for a year of my life or more. He hasn't gambled in 10 years now and is a freaking treat to be around. He still occasionally apologizes for being such an butthole. There's a guy in my town that everyone knows about because he owns this huge butt mansion in a middle class neighborhood. Apparently he was married to a woman for a long time, but she left him, calling him a loser because his business hadn't taken off yet. After she left him, his business finally took off. He sells medical equipment to hospitals, and he became frick levels of rich in a few years. The reason he built the mansion in that neighborhood was because that is where she lives, so she has to drive by the mansion on her way to work every day. Pro revenge. My mom filed for divorce after 27 years with my dad. Us kids were out of the house, and I think she had a midlife crisis, thinking that if she decided to do nothing, then that's how she'd die. In that house, doing nothing but things that make the days go by faster. I do believe an old high school flame helped her make the decision as well. At first I was hurt, but as I get older now I completely get why. My dad prefers routine over excitement and had a habit of saving us poor when we didn't need to. At first it was a financial requirement, then it became obsession. My mom wanted to travel and experience new things in her later years. She deserves that, and my dad deserves to live how he wants to too. Today I see two happier people, and that makes me happy. My parents got divorced after 22 years of marriage. They were never in love and didn't even like each other. They had me and then my sister a few years later and wanted to stay together for the kids. 12 years after I was born they had my brother, and that kept the cycle going. I wish I could say they are happy now, but they still like to cause trouble for each other. We're due with our first child soon and they're gonna have to figure out how to be grandparents together. Thankfully I'm 1,500 miles from them, so it won't be a headache often. I worked at a law firm that only practiced family law, divorces, child custody, wills and estates, etc. At one time we had like 8 clients getting divorced after 20+ years of marriage, and they were all high-ranking military men whose wives came out of the closet after all their kids had grown up and moved out of the house, and the guys were getting ready to retire. I thought it was so weird, but I guess for whatever reason the women thought that their duties to their husbands and families were coming to an end and they wanted to live for themselves. I guess I know why they couldn't come out 30 years ago. It was a different time, but I was curious why they were all attracted to military guys. I assume maybe cause it meant their husbands would be away for years at a time during their service. I think it depends more on how old the women were when they first married. Military people often tend to marry young and quickly. You don't know yourself when you're young. 20 years will do that to you. My parents split up after nearly 30 years. My dad was in butthole my entire life, so when they finally divorced when I was 18, there was no surprise. He'd been cheating for years and I think he was the one who finally asked for it. I think my mom stayed because she couldn't afford to start over. She spent her life putting my dad through school and wasn't educated herself. She had no family or anyone who could help her either. There was definitely some confidence issues on her part too. My husband began surreptitiously going to strip clubs. He stole about $200 a week from various accounts and a business I own to fund these activities. He lost his job because he went there so often at lunch and would just stay. We had young kids and so I stayed after he got some therapy. He was never honest with a therapist. About a year ago I learned he was doing it again. Plus texting strippers. My youngest kid graduates high school this year. I've done what's best for everyone else for 20 years now. This September was 21 years. I don't anticipate having a 22nd anniversary. It's really scary to think of being alone. I don't hate him. I feel sorry for him. I know he will feel very sad and lonely when I'm gone. But being near him feels like having my soul ripped from my body every day. I hope you find some peace. You've been keeping it together for your family for so long. You need to live for you now. Therapy changed my mind. After more than a decade of being miserable, I finally got help. When I was able to really talk about my marriage was when I realized that I needed to get the frick out. At the end of the day, I stayed in a crappy marriage because the thought of being alone scared me. Through therapy I was clued into how many wonderfully supportive friends and family members I had if I just reached out to them. I wasn't going to be in a relationship anymore, but I wasn't alone either. Congratulations and good for you. That must have been a difficult process of realization and growth. In my experience it's much more pleasant to be alone, if a little lost and lonely, than together with someone toxic. Not myself. But my parents, they were married for 22 years when they separated. 24 years by the time the divorce was final. From the perspective of a child in the situation, there was no way that they were happy people together. There was hardly ever a quiet moment in the house because of my father's temper, but my mother knew how to serve it back too. However, the final straw was more of a chain of events. My father had a very rigid view of the family. Man works, woman stays home, cares for the home and children. When I was in high school, my father got injured at work and needed surgery. He worked a physically demanding job and would be out for 6 months. My mother, knowing that we were already falling behind on vehicle and house payments, decided to find part-time employment. She worked while the kids were in school. It was still important to her to see her kids get on the bus and be there when they got home. My father immediately believed that she was cheating on him. He installed a tracker and tape recorder in her car. He showed up at her workplace and caused a scene multiple times. He questioned her co-workers. He spent most of time at the house drinking. This was not an equal partnership, and it really never was. You should have seen how hurt he acted when my mom finally asked for a divorce. But he rebounded real quick. All he had to do was tell some woman on Plenty of Fish his sob story, and he moved right into her house. He spent a couple of years treating her and her children horribly before she kicked him out. Only took him a couple of weeks in a hotel to find another woman to let him move in. Parents divorced after 25 years when my mom had what we thought at the time was a midlife crisis. She told my dad by draining $3K from the joint checking account to fund her divorce lawyer. 6 years later they were officially divorced since she blew through that money on different lawyers that kept firing her as a client. We later ruled out midlife crisis when her behavior started to become more odd, erratic, and paranoid. She was in her early 50s when this behavior started. Now we, myself and my sister-in-law with psychology experience, think she has late onset bipolar, and I say think since we can't get her officially diagnosed since she believes nothing is wrong with her. She lives in NY and it is super hard to commit someone there unless they are a danger to themselves or other people. She's not dangerous, just can't hold down a job and lives in her car due to her own insubordinate sporadic paranoid behavior but blames everyone else. No, she's not a narcissist, just mentally ill since she was never like this when we were growing up. She was very selfless and caring when she was younger. We were together for 20 years, married for 15. We started as high school sweethearts, but we eventually realized that we weren't the same people we were when we fell in love. We also realized that that wasn't going to change. We decided that the best way for everyone to be happy for the rest of our lives was to end it on peaceful terms before we were both 70 and resentful of each other for trapping each other in an unhappy marriage for 40 plus years. I will be one of the few that speaks from experience. I have been married 20 years, and we are on the edge. The answer is that life changes you. When you start out, the relationship is its own thing. It is cultivated and grows. Then over the years add some children and full-time jobs, and there is less time to cultivate, or none. You end up becoming life partners to run the household, and wonder why you are even together. Since there are no good times, all that is left are arguments and bad times. This is all normal, and on top of that you are both going through the personal struggles of living. To be honest, staying married is tougher than most people think in an age without divorce social stigma. The kids to keep you together, hoping somehow you can rekindle something that once existed. And this is in a situation with two good people trying to do the right thing, and not a toxic situation with abuse. Obligatory, not me, my parents. My dad filed for divorce after 25 years of marriage. My mom was shell-shocked. My dad was absolutely miserable, but the signs of a failed marriage were always present. My dad is very emotional and is quick to anger. He never really handled failure very effectively and would be mad instead of constructive. My mom very family oriented and was adamant that we never move farther than 40 miles from Chicago. Heck, when I was going away to college, she bawled to my dad to force me to go to a school closer to home. In a way, I think my dad resented my mom for never letting him travel or get away from Chicago. It also doesn't help that I'm fairly certain my mom became undiagnosed depressed once her mom died. All she would do was do her bare minimum at her job, a school bus driver, come home and sleep, finish a route for the day, cook a hamburger, help a meal for the family, and then play Angry Birds on her iPad. It's really weird seeing your parents divorce in your 20s. You're adult enough to speak candidly and neither of them likes what you have to say about them during or after the fact. The silver lining out of it is my sisters and I know how not to behave in a relationship. Your last paragraph. So true. As someone whose parents divorced when I was 22, it was good in a way because I was able to comprehend it more, but it also messed me up with trust issues and still made me feel really lost. But I was an adult so I was just expected to deal with it. Didn't get divorced but started the process after about 25 years. Stuck it out for a few more years for the kids and ended up falling in love with her after the kids moved out. Relationships follow cycles. So glad I stuck it out. Stories like this give me hope. Would love to hear some of your tips on how you made the relationship work again. Not me, but my grandmother once told me that she was considering divorcing her husband of over 50 years. The reason she gave me was, we stayed together for the kids. Now the kids are all grown up and have lives of their own. And now I can't ignore the small things about him, my grandpa, that annoy me. She didn't go through with it but she seemed sincere when she said it. It broke my heart, especially since I only ever saw the best side of him. Heard a story about a couple divorcing in their late 80s after 70 years of marriage. When asked why they waited with it for so long, they responded that they did not want to disappoint their children. So they did it when their children died of old age. We were together for 20 years but only married for 13 of them. Our interests just diverged over the years. I got more into music and art, wanted to go to festivals and such, and she wanted to frick her boss. I'm very grateful our attempts to have kids failed. It's much easier to make a clean break that way. That's quite the divergence. A friend of mine was married for nearly 30 years, 2 kids. As she put it, they'd been playing divorce chicken for a decade. There weren't any concrete reasons to get divorced. They didn't fight, they actually got along very well. They just weren't in love anymore. There was always a good pragmatic reason for them to stick together. They co-parented effectively. They actually liked each other. They kept saying their marriage was probably better than a lot of people's. A few years ago they just decided it was time. They went out for drinks and started hashing out how to divide their assets. They agreed on a 50-50 split. They got a lawyer to make everything legit and a few months later they got divorced. My friend's ex-husband rented a house a few blocks away so their kids could easily walk between mom's and dad's house. About 6 months after the divorce was finalized, my friend's ex-husband set her up with a new boyfriend. They go on double dates. They go to parent-teacher conferences together. What a refreshingly sensible way to approach such a sensitive issue, rather than drag it along like so many others. They were able to see that they weren't happy, and even more surprisingly they didn't hold bitterness and grudges towards each other. I wish all the people who aren't happy in their current life situation could behave so maturely and handle it in such a healthy way. She cheated for years. Plain and simple. Ended our 22-year marriage. TBH. Don't even want to work through it. Now that we've separated for a while, I realize how toxic she'd become. I'm a much better man without her. My mom left my dad on their 30th wedding anniversary. He had been in and out of rehab 3 times at that point and could not commit to quitting drinking. She couldn't stay and watch him drink himself to death anymore. My dad had multiple affairs and my mom got tired of it. There was also alcoholism and both parents were workaholics. My dad remarried a lovely woman, and so did my mom. Oh, that may have been an issue too. Must be rough when they discovered they married the same woman. Not me, but a lady I worked with. Her and her husband had been married for almost 30 years. They had 2 kids, both in their mid-late teens, and a full life together. She was the stay-at-home mom. He made the big bucks, etc. Anyways, once the kids both started to grow up and stop wanting to go to the cottage, they realized that when left alone together they didn't have much in common. Then the kids started leaving for school, and I guess things got worse. I think everything would have been fine if not for the father's dad, the grandfather, getting sick. It turns out the old man had near $4 million to his name and was giving it all to the father. So, dad consults a lawyer who says that since it's an inheritance, if he's divorced before he gets it he can keep all of it, and as such, he divorces her within days. She stopped working for us shortly after. but I know it was pretty hard on her. She got her fair shake of the currently owned assets, but couldn't touch the $4 mill. My grandparents initiated divorce proceedings a month after my dad, the youngest of his siblings, graduated college. They had stayed together to provide a stable home for their children, and once they'd all left the nest, my grandparents were ready to move on. My parents intended to separate after 20 or so years. Once my sister and I left the home, Mum got sick and Dad cares for her. They live almost completely separate lives in the same house. I check in their daily BC of my own marriage having gone south and financially ruining me. I see a fair amount of these divorces get filed by older folks because one of them has dementia or the like and needs to be moved into a care facility. The couple will file for divorce in order to protect the family assets from getting completely eaten up and Medicaid takes over the brunt of it. It is pretty sad that our healthcare state is such that it is necessary to take such a step to make sure someone gets the care that they need without destroying the other spouse's ability to care for themselves. Until the shredded safety net do us part. Before not my story, my grandparents. They met and married in the 50s. Super Catholic family. 6 kids in 9 years thereabouts. Husband worked. Wife took care of the family dynamic. It was honestly a lot of little things that my grandma eventually got tired of. First it was trying to wrangle her 3 boys, all with difficult personalities, to church, so they stopped going. Then it was things like not helping with the difficult kids, women's work, not helping with household chores. That's what kids are for, being emotionally distant. He's a man. They don't do emotional crap, etc. From the way my grandma tells it, she stuck it out so long because she thought that's what a good Catholic woman does, be long-suffering and patient. It wasn't until she started exploring outside Catholicism that she decided she'd suffered long enough. The divorce ended up being civil and mutual. Grandpa was never one for causing a scene, and both my grandparents ended up in loving, understanding second relationships. Neither remarried officially. Funny random side note, when I graduated high school in 2012, my mother invited both my grandparents to my graduation. By that time they'd been divorced for longer than they'd been married, 20 odd years together, 30 plus years divorced by my math, and didn't even recognize each other until after the ceremony. Imagine spending a huge chunk of your life with someone then not recognizing them in public years later. I'd also point out if I saw my 50 years younger self in the streets I wouldn't recognize me either. I was married to a wonderful woman for 27 years, 1 daughter, a perfect little family. Then I had an affair, and it broke her heart. We are still good friends, and I see her at least once a week. But I wish I could go back and undo the terrible damage I did. Now I'm 60, I live alone, and all I have left are memories and regrets. My husband had an affair around our 24th year. He broke my heart, too. We are still together now at 29 years. I'm not sure I'll ever heal from it. Everything has changed. My entire view of the world has changed. Even now, years later, I'm reeling knowing that the person I loved and trusted more than anyone else on earth could and did hurt me so badly. 28 years and I lost him to mental illness. I tried for years to get him help but he refused. He is a genuinely good person and was once an amazing husband and father. I have been divorced over 2 years and still haven't dated anyone because no one will ever compare to the man he was. Smart, romantic, thoughtful, socially conscious, hard worker, etc. That man doesn't exist anymore. I am the one who sought the divorce but expected him to want to work it out. When he said I think that's for the best I was heartbroken. He lives upstairs from me, because where would he go? I can just toss him to the streets, but it does make it harder. I feel more like a widow tbh. My parents got divorced because of my dad. We grew up in a military family. Dad was always deployed. My mom is a walking medical disaster. No offense to her. RA at 23, endometriosis at 24, got a hysterectomy and everything. They married early and had kids really early because of the endometriosis. My mom tried to cater to my dad, make sure he could still live his life in his 20s because they had kids earlier than expected. Well, being deployed all the time meant my dad could just frick around with ladies off in other places. My mom stayed home and took care of us. Dad gets a divorce when he gets back. Gets remarried like 3 months later. That lasted like 2 years before she got her green card and ditched him. My mom still loves him despite him moving on to his third marriage, having another kid, and never actually paying his portion of child support. So pretty much they got divorced so my dad could have a younger, more subservient wife. I would boo him every time he came into the room. He was a serial cheater. The straw that broke the camel's back was my then 15-year-old daughter having a panic attack and being hospitalized over the guilt she felt for keeping his secret. He had been having an affair with a married woman for a year and had been taking our kids with him to play house with her and her kids while her husband was out of state for work in the oil field. He was using his dying grandfather as cover by claiming to be staying overnights in the hospital with him so he wouldn't be alone and that he was taking our kids with him so they could go home with his mother and get to spend time with their grandparents on that side. He threatened our kids and guilted them into keeping it a secret until my daughter just couldn't handle it anymore. She told me he called her a lying B and a stupid W, and when she ran to her bedroom to get away from him screaming at her, he chased her and kicked her bedroom door down to get at her for telling. I put him out of my house immediately and divorced him. Also, his entire family knew what he was doing and kept up the sleeping in the hospital with dying grandpa cover for him. He had been taking this woman and her kids to his family functions and they all welcomed them with open arms. His mother went so far as to also verbally attack my daughter when she told and called her a liar and accused her of stirring up drama for the attention. Holy cow, that's messed up. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. My parents started considering divorce right around that time, but ended up deciding against it. My dad was military and had PTSD from Afghanistan. But it didn't cause problems at home because he was stationed at a base across the state from us, so he was only home on the weekends. When he got restationed and we moved, we all lived in the same house again. His PTSD and my mom's anxiety did not play off of each other well, so they considered divorce, but decided to work through it. What did your crush do that absolutely killed your interest? This was in college. We were acquaintances and had a few classes together. He was cute, funny, and I totally had a crush on him. He asked me out to dinner and a movie. At the restaurant he ordered the most expensive things on the menu. Apps, drinks, lobster, and even dessert. When the bill came he said, "You got this, right?" I was so embarrassed I paid. Then I said I'd skip the movie because I wasn't feeling well and he asked me to give him $20 for gas and for wasting his time. I didn't and just left. Ugh. After that he couldn't seem to understand why I didn't want to go out with him again. Holy frickle mayo. I was giving her a place to sleep when she was feuding with her mother. After weeks of picking up after her, I dared to complain. She had a screaming fit, packed up her crap and left. I was glad to be rid of her, until later it got around to me that she was telling people on FB that I kicked her out for refusing to give me a blowjob. There is a lot I can forgive, but that was the first time I had ever had anyone just straight up make stuff up about me. Frick you, eh? Bragged about drinking and driving. He told me that he and his friends have a nothing under 100 club, where they drink and then drive on the interstate going 100 plus mph and have to send a full-length Snapchat video of the speedometer to each other. 2 of my friends had been killed by a drunk driver 3 months prior. Oh god, that's awful. We went to Disneyland, where I had an annual pass, with my friends and family for an event called Dapper Day where you dress up in dapper clothing so everything looks very old timey. I had done it for years with my friends and he wanted to come, and my mom and siblings were going for the first time too. I was really excited as it was the first time he had ever met my family. Well, we went on one ride with my family and my friends and then he said, "Do you want to go on a ride just me and you?" I thought we'd come back and spend the rest of the day with them, but as soon as we were out of earshot he was complaining about my family and how weird it was that they were there and he wanted to do Disney with just me. But he had known they were coming so I was confused. Then we went on one more ride and he started complaining about how hot it was, how tired he was, and before lunch he wanted to go home. I was super upset but didn't want him leaving on his own so I just went with him. But on the way home I wished I had just let him leave and I could have stayed with all the people I loved. It was the first time in years my sister and my mom had been to Disney and I didn't know it then, but it was the last time I got to go with my brothers before they grew up, and now they hate me. He was just some dude I dated, not a boyfriend or anything that lasted very long. I'm still so mad at myself for letting him ruin my day. But yeah, it absolutely killed anything I felt for him and we broke up a few days later. Revealed his list of conquests. Not even my brother knows how many women I've slept with. Then he offered to take my virginity in the back of his pickup truck. I passed. I'm black. She's black. Our crush was mutual. Then she found out that I was once in a relationship with a white woman. She then jumped down a rabbit's hole of my betrayal of the black family and some other nonsense of my trauma of self-hatred. Never been turned off by anything faster than that. We were in the process of getting together. She had called over and we spent an afternoon watching movies and sitting close together. By about 8 in the evening she was considering staying later and I was casually encouraging her. She asked if she could take a shower and I was like, yeah, sure, of course. Glad that the bathroom was clean and tidy and I had fresh towels. Anyway, about 4 minutes later she calls me saying she needs help with the shower and I give her a moment to get a towel around herself and knock on the bathroom door. She opens it completely naked and shows me that she's having trouble with the shower controls. So I'm kinda unsure whether to make the move or start with the controls, so I go with the flow and show her this is hot and cold, this is pressure, this is rainforest, and this is power jets. In the 5 seconds it takes me to do this she has sat on the toilet. Which is kinda a weird thing because I need to be able to make the next move. And she's sitting on the toilet, naked, with the lid up, looking all disinterested. I'm thinking I've screwed it up when suddenly, kersplosh, and she takes a dump right in front of me, and then another one. I was just I'll leave you to it. I tear my head out. He talked about how he and his friends used to abuse farm cats. They talked about one that was buried and then run over. I did a quick 180 and absolutely hated him. Unfortunately I only heard about the abuse when he was talking to someone else, and it wasn't a recent thing. Think high school, and at this point he was a few years into college. I also live in Farmtown, USA, so this really isn't an uncommon thing, and I doubt the cops would do anything. I'm glad to see so many caring people on here, though. Cats don't get as much love in my community as they should. Our 3 are here living in spoiled royalty, and my dad hates it. Ooh, well that's definitely serial killer territory. She asked if things didn't work out if I would mind if she went out with my roommate. I said I couldn't possibly do that to him and left. Quick, we're gonna need an ambulance for this burn. He tried to discreetly take photos of my feet. Nothing against people who are into that, but the way he was going about it was super creepy. Yikes. She asked me if I was good with kids because she was pregnant with her ex and that she's not good with kids. It was the first date. We were teenagers. He lived in a different province, and we used to chat on Skype. He wanted me to think he was a badass or something and would always talk about his drug use. He ended up faking a H overdose when we were on chat together. I was hysterically crying and freaking out thinking I was watching someone dying and was trying to figure out how to call 911 in another province when he snapped out of it and told me he was actually okay. I didn't talk to him much after that. Goddamn. What a loser. Stole from a homeless person. We were walking together downtown and she saw a bucket of coins in front of a pharmacy. She just scooped it all up and kept walking. Guy comes out as she's 20 feet away or so and yells at her. She keeps moving. I stood there and just gave him a $20 and didn't hang out with her anymore. We were 14 and 15. It was very nice of you to give him money. I can't imagine why someone would steal from a homeless person. His sister actually approached me and let me know that he was once arrested for locking their other pregnant sister in their basement, went on a coke binge while she desperately tried to get out, and went outside to beat their unsuspecting neighbor's van with a golf club. That was a big ol' nope. Sister's a legend BTW. Had a crush on this girl back in high school. She seemed like a sweet girl. After she rejected me I let it go but still was interested in maintaining some sort of friendship. Found out she was actually pretty toxic behind my back. She made fun of me for a lot of things that really didn't matter, like hand motions while talking, and I just lost interest in her entirely, even in a friendship. This guy's dong is way too big, like disgustingly big. LOL. He probably can't even find a pair of shorts long enough to conceal it. What a loser. Oh, and he moves his hands around a lot when talking. This was years ago, on a first date. Tried to convince me to quit my job and put all my savings into gold bars, then demanded I let him read my tarot cards to see if we'd be a good fit. Nope. Another controlling type. I. Huge crush on a fellow uni student. I was invited over for what I expected to be a platonic study date, but hey, any time spent is better than just being alone. Or so I thought. Got there and found another student from class also. Okay, study group. Turns out her mom and her set us up for a full press MLM pitch. Video, literature, the works. I stayed a bit not to be rude, excused myself shortly, and only talked to her in class just in passing from then on. Huge letdown. MLM means multi-level marketing, aka a pyramid scheme. Signing up to both buy and sell something, while recruiting others to sell also. You get a percent of all of your recruits' sales also. All the percentages basically flow upward, so the only way to make any significant money is to be high in the tree towards the top of the pyramid. It's all bulls, basically. That is probably the most insane thing I could imagine. You know dang well she's not keeping friends after that. Told me he was only being nice to me because he was interested in a friend of mine. I see his Facebook posts now. He is dumber than a box of rocks on a treadmill. I'm not sure why the box of rocks on the treadmill is dumber than the box of rocks not on a treadmill, but I accept the metaphor. She got blackout drunk at a party and violently shat her pants. The smell alone completely turned me off of any interest I had. Violently, LMAO. When I was a teenager we worked together as lifeguards. I adored him so much until one day he just starts talking about this random woman that he didn't know and wasn't even there, that was wearing shorts. He said he was fine until she sat down and had some cellulite on her thighs, and he kept being angry and talking about how she should be doing squats to be more appealing. Like, his rant was angry and long and no one was adding to his conversation. Just silence. After that I took off my rose-colored glasses and saw that he was, in fact, a huge douchebag. I'm kinda grateful he showed himself that way, cause I was really into him until then. Could have been a bad time for my teenage brain. How dare women not be attractive in front of him. Ugh, what a douchebag. I'm glad you were able to see through to him. We worked together and as I got to know him more I learned he talked badly about everyone. Nurses that are amazing he'd belittle. Talk about how certain people don't know what they're doing because they asked for an ultrasound IV as they were struggling getting a vein on a H addict. The paramedics were worthless. Doctors don't know what they're doing. Who he thought was hooking up and it completely turned me off. He's in his early 40s and into gossip more than my teenage daughter. Ah yes, the know-it-all tech who finished half of medic school. He picked me up for our first date and his car was disgusting. Not talking a few trash items. The entire back seat and floorboard was completely covered in piled up trash, even up front. I had to step on empty McDonald's bags, old soda bottles, wrappers to even get in. And all he said was, just move it around with your feet. No sorry or anything. Made me feel like trash too. Like dang. Couldn't even clean up a little? Dumped me after 9 months because she wasn't ready for a serious relationship. Got into a relationship the next day and was married within 5 months. Told me that she didn't like me back anymore, but maybe if I waited long enough she would like me like that again. She told me that I had gotten more critical lately and I changed, so she wanted me to change back before she would be with me. Ugh, I hate this. You're not an airport. You don't get to put people in holding patterns. Light the back fence of the school on fire to impress a mate. Should add that he did it whilst high. Herb is not legal here in Australia yet. Arson does tend to be a deal breaker. Basically shut me down and made it clear to me that I was being the typical nice guy cliche. This is back when I was about 20. After a couple of days of sulking, I started examining my behavior and realized she was absolutely right. Glad it happened. My ideas of how a relationship should work were entirely twisted at the time. I got my crap together shortly after, addressed my stupid and entitled behavior, worked on myself, mentally and physically, and eventually met an amazing woman who is now my wife. Scary to look back and think how close I got to becoming one of those incel neckbud types. You should thank that lady as well. Talked crap about every woman in his life. Should have seen the red flags earlier. Didn't realize until later that he probably did the same to me. Apparently having an opinion about anything and speaking for yourself isn't a very ladylike thing to do. He sounds totally not insecure. She invited me over to her place, not as a date thing, but just to hang out as friends. Her house was absolutely filthy and the glass of Coke she gave me had a hair in it. She was really cute, had a great personality, and was a genuinely nice person. But as soon as I saw cat crap on the floor near the front door and just dirty everything, my crush disappeared and I left in a hurry. Yeah, there's messy and then there's this. Said she was staring up a group for LGBT youth. I asked her why, and then realized I had been barking up the wrong tree. I'm dumb, she's a lesbian. I was a midnight clerk at a truck stop, and very good looking man came in every night on his run to visit with me. He wore an ankle monitor for probation parole. I asked about it and he told me he was falsely accused of kissing his ex-wife's daughter. She was 13. I took his word. He seemed to be a real good guy. About 2 weeks later we were bullshitting and flirting, and a little girl about 12 years old came in with her dad. He looked that little girl up and down like a pervert. I was instantly sick to my stomach. Yikes. Dude was the perfect epitome of the term douchebag. He used to be nice to people only to gain their trust and then betray them. He was attractive though and a smooth talker as well. We started talking, became friends and I developed a crush on him. Unfortunately, I never knew then what type of double-headed snake he was. Then on one day I witnessed him throwing his best friend under the bus just to save his reputation. Completely lost interest. Cut ties with him and he gave no crap about it. Only then did I realize how toxic people can be sometimes. English isn't my first language, so when I read one day I witnessed him throwing his best friend under a bus, my brain didn't immediately register that it was a thing. I thought he actually murdered his friend. She physically shushed me in a group with her finger on my lips while I was singing along with my friends to a cover band. Frick that. She detested cats and insisted that I give up my furry buddy before she'd move in with me. It wasn't that she was allergic to cats. She issued the ultimatum because, according to her, my cat received too much of my time and affection, and she wasn't going to compete. Mayo, imagine laying awake at night knowing you lost to a cat. Overheard her insulting my hobbies, clothes, hairstyle, personality etc. with her friends. Now I was never Prince Charming, but frick me that hurt. Bouncer at a bar I used to go to. I had a mad crush on him. He was beautiful. He was a bit of a tart. Every night some starry-eyed equally beautiful woman would leave with him. Being a bit of a tart was not a deal breaker for me. I was too back then, if not as successful as him as I'm not a super pretty girl. But one night I guess he left crap too late. The hot girls were gone and he informed me that he was willing to take me home that night. Number. Nothing less hotter than that'll do, pig. Being treated like a sure thing, and of course the answer is gonna be yes, because how would someone like me turn down someone like him? Call me a safe bet. I'm betting I'm not. Being obsessed with weird crazy conspiracy theories. Being over the age of 20 and having naked woman posted all over his bedroom wall like a teen. Having crap tons of pics of naked woman saved to his computer and talking about how he'd love to punch and fight people, normally his friends or people he knew. Being rude to the waiter and complain that food is taking too long during dinner rush hour. I work in the industry for a year. It's not easy when being slammed during rush. She offered to drive and picked me up in her car because we had plans to go out to dinner and get to know each other better. I realized after about 20 minutes she was not driving to the restaurant and instead stopped at a gas station to get into someone else's car and buy drugs. Basically made me accessory to a drug deal under false pretenses. Believe it or not, this has sort of happened to me. The guy was driving us in my car and conducted a deal in a back streets of an industrial estate close to where I lived. I was baffled. I had big self-esteem issues and we had been fooling around and I just didn't even care about anything he did up till that point. I was so angry he had literally used my car to commit a crime. My 18-year-old self thought it would be cute to invite him to a Christmas parade, but this dude had the audacity to ask me why I thought he would ever be interested in someone like me. I wish I could take you all to a Christmas parade. Also, I met my boyfriend just over a year ago and it has been the most wonderful surprise of my life. I just physically cringed. This would devastate me. Girl in car behind him honked when the light turned green. He got out of the car and began screaming and banging on her windshield. That's when I knew he was a psycho and I needed to get out of that relationship. Took me a destroyed home and 2 restraining orders later, but we've been broken up for 3 years now. Gosh, sorry to hear that, but glad that you've seen the issue and got out of it. She brought a friend to dinner with us, which was okay, I didn't mind. Then they both shoplifted afterward while I was on the other side of the store. Told her I didn't date thieves and she broke down apologizing. She talked about how she stalked her ex-boyfriend across multiple state lines. She wasn't a crush, but I just wanted to put this out there. This was a first date too. Treated me like crap for being the only female in our paintball team. He said that women belong to kitchen, not battlefield. He didn't say battlefield. We are Polish. He said something that cannot be translated perfectly, so I just captured the idea. The word battlefield is mine. I didn't know how to call it in English. Now I know it's a field. Sorry. Battlefield LOL. This was in preschool, but she put relish on her hot dog. Game over. I've since learned to love relish and always wonder what could have been. I was 21 and in college. He was a classmate of mine. He seemed so charming and was easy on the eyes. One day I overheard him talking to his friends about how he doesn't date engineer women because math is for men. Some people might miss the point here. It's not that he said he wouldn't want to date an engineer that bothered me. It's that he said that women aren't meant for math. Sounds like a buddy of mine. Well, not entirely. He doesn't believe the last part about math being for men, but he wouldn't date someone who studies engineering, since he is also in the field. In college, I was crazy about a girl named Megan. She was maybe 2 years younger than me, blonde, life of the party type gal. Took her to dinner and chatted her up about her life. Got to talking about past SOS and realized she had very little experience with meaningful, loving relationships. Romantically, it seemed she was on autopilot. In fact, the more we talked, the more obvious it became that she wasn't ready to love anyone but herself. Which, you know, good for her. Self-love and self-discovery are kind of big parts of going away to college and growing up. But I realized in that moment that what I wanted versus what she wanted were miles apart. It was a crystallizing moment, and I felt the distance between us widen and watched her shrink away. Never asked her out again, and she never asked why. Either she felt it, too, or autopilot just kicked in, or she just wasn't interested. This is well written. I can definitely relate to have the moment crystallize and then immediately feel the separation begin to happen, almost like you're dissociating. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.